Chapter 51-24. Monk. Everyone couldn't help but stare blankly. The little monk Kong Kong, who was using a small spoon to drink soup, touched his bald head with his other hand and asked curiously, "A monk like me?" Xiaoyan stifled her laughter and nodded. The master said his name is Kong Yin. Arbor and Emolian looked at each other and stood up. "Let's go out and take a look." "Jojo, did something happen?" Wei Ziqin also stood up worriedly. Arbor hurriedly comforted her. "It's nothing, mother. Master Kong Yin is the great elder of the elder compound. He should be here, because something happened at the elder compound, and he needs my husband's help to deal with it." Sir Jojo casually came up with an excuse and said it very smoothly. When Wei Ziqin heard this, she put away her slightly nervous emotions and nodded. "Then let little Emo go, and meet this master quickly. Don't tell me it's something important. Benefactress, this little monk will go with you." When the little monk heard that Master Kong Yin was here, he naturally couldn't sit still. He stomped down to the ground and scampered outside after Qiao Mu and Emolian. Arbor only stopped after he left the dining hall, and waited for the short-legged little monk. Although the little monk's legs were short, his martial arts weren't weak, and his speed wasn't slow. In just a moment, the little guy ran up and asked with a pair of big black and white eyes, "Benefactress, carry me on your back." Arbor was a little amused, and was about to speak when he saw Emolian pick up the little monk first. "All right, let's go." The little monk angrily opened his big round eyes and shouted angrily, "I don't want you. I don't want you. This little monk wants Benefactress to carry me." This stinky man always liked to carry him around. He wasn't a cabbage. As usual, Emolian completely ignored the child's complaints and walked out with Arbor. When they arrived at the entrance of the side hall, they saw the old monk Kong Yin from afar. He was dressed in a gray robe. His back was facing the two of them. He was pacing back and forth under a tree not far away. "Old monk." The little stoic faintly called out to his back. Kong Yin hurriedly turned her head back with a look of joy on her face. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, Crown Princess, it's great to see both of you. Why are you looking for us?" The little stoic asked expressionlessly. "If you want us to contribute money to support the elderly home, then don't open your mouth." "Emolian." The old monk's mouth twitched, and he glared indignantly at the little stoic. "You must have earned a lot from your trip to the River of Forgetfulness. So what if you sympathize with us old folks and allocate some funds to the elder courtyard?" The little stoic chuckled, and didn't continue speaking. However, the old monk suddenly turned around and hastily said, "Jojo, I came to find you this time because there is indeed an important matter." This little crown princess was truly someone who was used to interrupting. After being interrupted by her just now, he almost forgot what he wanted to say. As he spoke, his gaze landed on the little monk on the side. The little monk's eyes brightened. "Master, are you bringing this little monk back? What the hell was this little monk address?" The old monk's eyes twitched before he shook his head seriously. "No." "Oh." The little monk immediately drooped his small head in disappointment. Upon seeing this, the old monk hastily asked, "Do you want to return to the monastery with Master?" Chapter 51-25. That's not impossible. It's just that once you return to the temple, you'll have to separate from the benefactress. Are you willing then? The little monk immediately shakes his head like a rattledrum, hopping off the ground, and even shrinking behind Emolian. Great Master Kong Yin can't help but find it somewhat funny. He turns to look at Arbor and says, "This old monk has come this time to bring Kong Kong to a place." Arbor raises his eyebrows, but doesn't say anything, only looking at him. The old monk then says again, "To the Supreme Court's dungeon." A moment later, Arbor and the old monk sit down alone in the side hall. The two's gazes simultaneously fall on the two people outside the window, one big and one small. At this moment, Emolian has already picked up the little ghost, patting his head. The little monk raises his small fist, arguing with him about something, his voice sometimes high and sometimes low. Arbor looks for a while, then retracts his gaze, landing it on the old monk again. "What did you mean by what you said just now? You want to bring the little monk to the Supreme Court's dungeon to meet someone?" Just as Crown Princess heard, This old monk has indeed come to bring the little monk to the Supreme Court's dungeon to meet someone. Arbor raises his eyebrows noncommittally. The person you want the little monk to meet is King Duo Luo? She thinks carefully, a few strands of suspicion slipping through her eyes. The gaze she uses to stare at the old monk also becomes more and more unfathomable. You, from the moment you bumped into me in the long sparse forest's ancient temple, you've been scheming against me. No, Crown Princess, you've misunderstood. The old monk hurriedly waves his hand and says, this old monk has stayed in the long sparse forest's ancient temple for a few years. When I first saw Benefactress that day, I only thought that you looked very similar to Chu Yun. I really don't have any other thoughts. Even if you didn't have any thoughts at that time, after knowing my identity, you very naturally pushed the boat with the current and placed Kong Kong by my side. The old monk is silent for a moment, then nods. A monk doesn't make idle remarks. Benefactress has been an intelligent person since young. Her mind is exquisite and clear, guessing correctly. After that, he purposely threw the little monk by the little crown princess's side, to keep her company. Firstly, to improve their relationship, he can definitely help his little disciple at a critical moment. Secondly, the little crown princess is very capable. Naturally, she can protect the little monk. Xiaomu waved her hand in front of his face. You old monk, you really have a good plan. What is the little monk's relationship with King Duoluo? In the end, Xiaomu nonchalantly asked the old monk this question. Walking to enter the Supreme Court's dungeon to see a sea of bright orange, bright yellow light. In the middle of the large iron cage, there were mighty lion and tiger totems carved on the iron pillars. Arbor to close to her to the point, Aaron's right to the point. Hiesimo Lien raised his hand to pick him up. This time, the little monk doesn't resist. Instead, he hugs Emolien's arm and crawls into her embrace, his big eyes looking around vigilantly. Master, what is this place that we're in? The little monk suddenly asks. We're going down to meet someone. We're still going down. The little monk suddenly reaches out and hugs Emolien's neck, a trace of confusion and panic flashing through his eyes. If we go down, it'll be the 18th level of hell. Master, look at the wall. It's filled with all kinds of torture instruments, so scary. At the end of his words, his voice ripples. Arbor can't help but twitch the corner of her mouth. Chapter 51-26. The old monk was also somewhat speechless. He patiently explained to his little disciple, it's not the 18 levels of hell. Moreover, why would there be 18 or 19 levels of hell? Hell is not divided into levels. It's just a matter of areas. The old monk snorted, and could not help but nag at his disciple. I told you to do more homework and not delay your studies, but you're used to slacking off. You haven't even comprehended 1/10,000th of the essence of Buddhism. Mischievous. Master, I do my morning and evening classes every day. If you don't believe me, you can ask the benefactress. Seeing the little monk pointing at her, the benefactress only had a blank expression. Don't you usually sit together for morning, afternoon, and evening classes and finish tomorrow's morning classes tonight? The old monk could not help but blow his beard and glare. You must be slacking off and sleeping. You can't even get up to do your morning classes. The little monk pursed his lips and hurriedly shrank his head back, not uttering a word. Master, benefactress's husband, can you tell me who you want me to meet? Meet your grandfather. Arbor pondered for a few seconds before telling the truth. This child's mental age was different from ordinary children. He naturally had the right to know about this matter. Unexpectedly, the little monk opened his mouth in shock. Xiaona's grandfather? Xiaona has a grandfather? How could he not have a grandfather? If he did not have a grandfather, where did his father come from? If he did not have a father, where did he come from? Arbor looked at the little fellow's dazed expression, and could not help but raise his hand to pinch his little face. Yes, your grandfather is your grandfather. You are you. When you meet him later, don't believe anything he says. The little monk had a puzzled expression. He's a bad person? He's a traitor. Arbor nodded slightly. The little monk still understood the word traitor. A trace of shock appeared in his eyes. Don't tell me that rotten old man wants to drag Xiaona down with him? Everyone. This child's ability to infer many things from one instance was too strong. They had not revealed much information to him yet, but this child actually saw through the mystery himself. Emolien carried the little monk and floated down to the bottom floor of the water prison. She patted the little monk's head and said, "You don't have to be afraid of this person. Just answer him however you want." The little monk pursed his lips and replied with a non-committal "oh." A pair of big watery eyes looked around curiously. When his line of sight fell on King Doro in the water prison, the little monk glanced at him and hurriedly turned his head away, subconsciously shrinking into Emolien's embrace. Bang! King Duoluo angrily smashed a few iron bars. He couldn't help but roar. "Come here. Why are you hiding in the arms of this enemy?" Little monk was startled by his roar and instinctively hugged Prince Emo even tighter. What he saw was that the strange man in the water prison was really disheveled and dirty. Seeing the little monk hiding beside Emolien and refusing to get down, King Duoluo's old face turned red from anger. His entire body couldn't help but tremble slightly. This child in front of him was King Duoluo's grandson, his direct grandson. Yet, he was looking at him with apathetic eyes and hiding beside the enemy. After meeting for so long, he wasn't even willing to call him grandfather. Thinking of this, King Duoluo couldn't help but be furious. He shouted, "You're really my good grandson. You're exactly the same as your father." "Shut up." Sir Jojo coldly spat out 2 words. "There are still 2 more chapters to go. Even if I have something to do tomorrow, I probably won't be able to make it in time. I can return to normal on the 23rd. I'm going to sleep. Recently, the virus is wreaking havoc. I don't dare to stay up late. Everyone pay attention to your protection." Chapter 51-27. You're a prisoner in prison. Why do you have so much nonsense to say? Arbor shouted coldly. When his gaze swept past King Doro, it paused for a moment. However, it only took one glance for King Doro to quiver all over, and a haze covered his face. "Junior, how dare you speak to this old man like this?" King Doro said furiously. "I request to speak with my grandson alone. You don't have the right to negotiate with us." Arbor flatly refused this person's request and said coldly, "If you have something to say it quickly. If you don't, you won't have another chance to say it in the future." A chill inexplicably arose in King Doro's heart. Of course, he knew who the person before him was. How could he not recognize the original form of Lily's plan, and the core component of the entire plan? This young crown princess was rumored to be an extremely difficult person to get along with. It was said that her expression was apathetic and her methods were fierce, but seeing was believing. When King Doro saw this woman today, he felt that she seemed to be even more callous and ruthless than the rumored crown princess. What did she mean by saying those words just now? She meant that he, Emolyoshi, wouldn't live past these few days, right? He, Emolyoshi, had lived for so many years. What kind of storms and waves hadn't he seen? How could he be scared to the point that his legs went soft from mere threats from this ignorant brat? When he thought of this, King Doro resisted the urge to take a step back. He glared at Arbor in front of him and said word by word, "You can try. If this old man dies, then as this old man's grandson, crack." After a crisp sound, King Doro only realized that he had been whipped by a slender vine whipped through the water cage, when the back of his hand was hit by a heavy whip. This feeling was simply indescribable. King Doro, who had always been high and mighty, almost didn't dare to believe that this stoic-faced girl in front of him would use a whip at the slightest disagreement. Arbor's eyes carried some impatience. "If your goal is only to use the little monk's identity to threaten us, then there's no need for that. You can publicly reveal the little monk's identity," Arbor said coldly. "At that time, you can see whether the little monk is unlucky or you are more unlucky." King Duoluo's eyes revealed a trace of viciousness as he forcefully slapped the water cage. Even though the electric current scuttled through the back of his hand, he didn't feel the slightest bit of pain. "Aren't you afraid that the great emperor will blame you, saying that the crown prince and his wife were raising the grandson of a rebel? When the time comes, the 2 of you will be held accountable for your crimes." King Duoluo let out a cold laugh and said with a threatening tone, Being too close to the grandson of a rebel is not a glorious thing in the end. You don't know? The young crown princess said expressionlessly. On the way to the Supreme Court, the crown prince had already handed over a memorial stating that he wanted to adopt the little monk as his son. King Duoluo's face was filled with astonishment, unable to speak for a while. How the fuck did he know? He was locked up in this water prison, isolated from the rest of the world. What could he possibly know about the outside world? So you don't have to worry about it. From now on, Kong Kong will be the grandson of the great emperor. You! King Duoluo had an incredulous expression. Because of his fury, even his voice trembled a bit. How is that possible? If the great emperor knew his true identity, how could he possibly allow the crown prince to adopt him? Could it be that you haven't heard? Wildfire sets the prairie ablaze. Chapter 51:28. If you still dare to keep the grandson of King Doro alive now, then 10 or 20 years later, you will definitely regret it. You will definitely regret it. Arbor sneered. You have no way of knowing whether others will regret it or not. But what I know now is that you will regret it immediately. You shouldn't have provoked me. You shouldn't have led us here. Arbor said coldly, and suddenly raised a small porcelain bottle in his hand. What are you doing? Startled, King Doro subconsciously shrunk back. But he was surrounded in the water prison, and the range was only so big. No matter how he retreated, it was impossible for him to escape the attack range of Arbor and the others. Amitba. The little monk muttered, and turned to look at King Doro with a somewhat dazed expression. This old benefactor, the evil aura on your body is too heavy. If you carry evil in this life, you will definitely be unlucky in your next life. As someone who has been through this, I can't help but give you a word of advice. The heavens are watching what you do. It's not that the time hasn't come yet. When the time comes, you'll be finished. Everyone. Arbor's hand that was holding the porcelain bottle paused slightly, and glanced at the little monk speechlessly. He saw the little guy's round eyes staring at King Doro in front of him. Once he started talking about teaching, he couldn't stop his nagging rhythm. Say, you're already so old. What are you after? What are you thinking? Why do you want to rebel? Your rebellion will inevitably consume countless soldiers, sharpen and kill on the battlefield, plunge the people into misery and suffering, and anger the heavens. You failed. The little monk's face was solemn as he shouted crisply, taking 10,000 steps back. Even if you succeed in your rebellion, with your lifespan, you won't be able to live more than 3 years. What's the point of doing this? Why can't you think it through? You're already so old. What are you tormenting yourself for? Everyone. The old monk's mouth twitched as he secretly glanced at King Doro's face. Sure enough, the other party's face had already swelled to the color of pig liver. Thinking about it, the little monk's words were simply piercing and stabbing like knives. No matter who it was, they probably wouldn't be able to endure it, let alone King Doro, who had always been proud and arrogant. Shut up. Why should I shut up? The small monk continued unhappily. Master said that there is a lack of people in this world who can speak out for justice. Me. Kong Kong is the one who inherited Master's legacy. The little monk said solemnly. This little monk will never yield to evil forces like you. King Duoluo almost fainted from anger because of this little monk. Just thinking about it made him angry. Not only did he not gain any benefits from revealing Kong Kong's identity, he seemed to have completely offended the crown princess in front of him. He originally thought that by threatening Kongyin with Kong Kong's identity, Kongyin would think of a way to help him no matter what. Even if he couldn't get out of the water prison for the time being, it would be enough to let him keep his life. Who would have thought when the matter was revealed to the crown prince and the crown princess? The outcome was completely different from what he had expected. The most hateful thing was this little monk's mouth. He was obviously the grandson of King Duoluo, but he kept saying some unpleasant words. You're called Kong Kong, right? King Duoluo suppressed his bellyful of anger, and reluctantly put on an amiable face, as he faced the little monk Kong Kong. However, no matter how amiable his expression was, his face still looked a little awkward. Tomorrow at 12:04 p.m., 12:04 p.m., 12:04 p.m. To make up for these 2 days. Chapter 51:29. The little monk retorted expressionlessly, asking when you already know the answer. That's unnecessary. How could this sloppy old man in the water dungeon not have investigated his identity? Otherwise, how would he know that he was his grandson? Even now, he still pretended to ask for his name. Wasn't that asking when he already knew the answer? Everyone. This little imp's words were clear and logical, and he always liked to jump out with 4 words. His face was clearly adorable, but he still had to put on the appearance of a little adult lecturing. King Doro was so infuriated by him that he felt somewhat depressed. How could this child's words be so infuriating? If it weren't for the fact that he was currently imprisoned and couldn't move, he would really want to pull him over and give him a good beating. He was his grandfather. This child must have been led astray by that old bald thief Kong Een. Or perhaps he had been following the eccentric little crown princess for a long time and had been led astray. Otherwise, how could he have learned such a sharp-tongued way of retorting? Arbor shot him a glance and asked impatiently, "You called us here just for this?" King Doro was momentarily speechless. These people didn't follow his routine at all. How could he continue chatting happily with them? Then there's no need to talk anymore. King Doro's entire face was dark and gloomy. Crown Princess, you'd better think clearly before you speak. The little Crown Princess cast him a sidelong glance, with a bit of ridicule on her face. Xiao Yi is here. Properly explained to him how a prisoner should behave. Yes. Xiao Yi cupped his hands and turned around with quick steps. When he arrived in front of the water dungeon, he abruptly flung out a thick iron chain and wrapped it around King Doro's neck in an instant. King Doro was already on guard, but he was in a cage that was only so large and had no place to hide. After his neck was locked by the iron chain, he couldn't help but slide forward with the iron chain. With a snap, he was tightly stuck to the cage. The water dungeon was specially constructed so that once someone got close to it, it would recklessly emit gurgling electric currents. Previously, when King Doro slapped the cage, he only felt some pain from the electric current burning his hand. But now it was different. His entire body was stuck to the cage. From top to bottom, from his torso to his limbs, he was suffering from the torment of the electric current. King Duo Luo, who originally wanted to hold on, instantly let out a miserable howl. The young crown princess looked at the old man expressionlessly and continued to say coldly, "Don't say that we don't know how to respect the old and cherish the young. People like you are really unworthy. How could an old man who treated his children and grandchildren as tools for his career have the face to be called an elder?" In his mind, other than scheming, there was only scheming. Just like Long Qian, she didn't deserve anyone's respect and love. Arbor's face was cold and solemn. After saying this, he turned around and left with the small monk in his arms. "Come back." King Doro stared at Arbor's back and shouted harshly, "No, come back." Could it be that he could only live like this for the rest of his life? To be locked up in this dark water dungeon and spend the rest of his life in fear and trepidation? No, he was King Doro, the ruler of the Doro Kingdom. He was also a ruler, so how could the great emperor treat him like this? The rebellion more than 10 years ago had caused him to flee to the Pingjin Prairie. He had suffered for so many years, plotted for so many years, painstakingly cultivated and exhausted his mind. Was this the end? Chapter 5130. He couldn't accept it. He really couldn't accept it. Amidst the crackling electricity, King Duoluo glared furiously at the departing figures of Qiao Mu and company. He strenuously stretched out a hand and called out feebly through the cage, "No, come back! No, come back, come back, come back!" Bang! Opening the secret door of the dungeon, a ray of light, like a flash in the pan, flickered at the water cage's entrance. Then it once again returned to darkness. King Duoluo was completely flustered. He unwillingly shouted at Xiao Yi, You go call them back. We will have a good talk, a good talk." He really didn't expect that these two people would have this kind of attitude. They didn't give him the slightest compromise and didn't listen to him at all. King Doro was completely at his wit's end. He couldn't do anything to these two youngsters, who were like newborn calves that weren't afraid of tigers. Who knew that this husband and wife pair would have such a deceptive character? Others hadn't even finished speaking when the two impatiently left with the little monk in their arms. Couldn't they have a good talk? So why did they come here today? Did they just want to arrogantly tell him that Kong Kong would become the adopted grandson of the great emperor in a short while? Or did they want to say that in the future, Kong Kong would no longer have anything to do with him, King Doro, and the entire King Doro estate? Ah! King Doro's outer garment that was stuck to the cage was already completely soaked in sweat. This made the soreness even more intense. The electric current passed through his skin and went straight into his heart and lungs. That kind of heart-drilling and lung-piercing sizzling feeling really made his entire body feel extremely painful and numb. Only now did he know how vicious the methods of this couple, the Crown Prince and Crown Princess, were. However, Xiao Yi unexpectedly said with a smile, "Just now, there was a child here. The masters didn't want this subordinate to be too strict with you. After all, it was bloody. The child might have nightmares at night." King Doro's face was stuck to the cage. If there was a mirror in front of him right now, he would naturally see clusters of small snake-like electric currents moving back and forth on his face. The skin all over his body had long been charred by the electric current. Because his spiritual energy was sealed, he simply couldn't circulate his energy to resist the power of the 5 spirits contained in the cage. Therefore, one could imagine the pain he was feeling right now. What do you want? What do you want to do?" King Duo Luo was now somewhat terrified. He thought that he had to find a chance to talk to Kong Yin. He had to find a way to survive. However, he did not expect that Kong Yin would be so tasteless as to directly seek out the couple. Now that things had turned out this way, it seemed that there was no way to salvage the situation. "You don't forget, I am the Crown Prince's uncle. You can't do this to me. That's impossible." Heh. Xiao Yi could not help but sneer. He raised his hand to press his face against the cage. "Is that so? If you don't want to cause trouble for His Highness, I can let you stay for a few more days." Xiao Yi waved the porcelain bottle in his hand in front of King Doro and said with a smile, "Look, this is a gift from the Crown Princess Darren. What if you took it yourself? Let me help you." King Duo Luo's complexion abruptly changed. He couldn't help but tremble. "You dare to lynch this old man? His Majesty hasn't even said that he's going to execute me. How dare you? How dare you? Whether I dare or not, isn't it only after I do it that we'll know?" Xiao Yi said with a chuckle as he waved the porcelain bottle in front of him. Chapter 5131. In this subordinate's opinion, King Duo Luo is at death's door. Yet he's no longer as brave as he was in the past. He's also a coward. How about this? Let this subordinate fulfill my filial piety for the prince. Scram! Scram, scram, scram! King Duo Luo forcefully waved his hands, but his entire body was pressed against the iron cage. The range of movement his hands could move was no more than half a meter. Moreover, his spiritual power was currently sealed, making him akin to a cripple. Even if he extended his hand to slap Xiao Yi, the other party would only treat it as scratching an itch. King Duo Luo's slap had no effect whatsoever on Xiao Yi. You let go of this old man. We need to discuss this. How about this? You go and ask the Crown Prince and Crown Princess to come back. Tisk. Xiao Yi smiled and shook his head. I didn't expect the prince to actually admit defeat. I originally thought that with the prince's fearless temperament, he wouldn't admit defeat even at death's door. It's really only when things come to a head that one can truly see a person clearly. At this moment, King Duo Luo didn't bother arguing with Xiao Yi. What he wanted to do the most right now was to fight for his life. Fight for his life, he must fight for it. At this very moment, King Duo Luo was already extremely regretful. In his opinion, if he had known earlier that the Crown Prince and Crown Princess were actually such stubborn people, then he naturally wouldn't have dared to provoke these two lords. The most hateful of all should be that old baldy Kong Yin. It was he who had to invite this couple over. Now that he was riding a tiger, he had no way to back down. He simply didn't know what to do next. Prince, can you go on your way with peace of mind? Xiao Yi asked with a chuckle. King Duo Luo's entire body trembled, and he said in an almost pleading tone, Can't you give this old man, another chance? How about this? Before he could finish speaking, he saw Xiao Ye's expression turn cold, and he unceremoniously grabbed his face with one hand, forcing him to open his mouth. A porcelain bottle of medicinal powder was poured in just like that, without mercy, causing old King Duo Luo to cough incessantly. You. Although King Duo Luo didn't know what powder Xiao Yi had forced him to take, he was very clear in his heart that it definitely wasn't anything good. He was extremely flustered, and the hair on his head was standing on end because of the electric shock. Emolian, Xiaomu, he bellowed hoarsely, his tone laced with intense hatred. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he realized that he had completely lost his voice. His eyes were lifeless, and he sat down in a daze. With a splash, he sat down in the water. From his neck down, his entire body was soaked in the smelly water, but he didn't feel it at all. He just stared blankly at Xiao Yi. Ha ha ha. Not long after, Xiao Yi heard a few gasps coming from King Duo Luo's throat. The gasps were sometimes fast and sometimes slow, sometimes short and sometimes long, but his face looked extremely normal. There was nothing abnormal about him at all. However, Xiao Yi knew that King Duo Luo might have already lost his mind. Looking at how he was staring blankly at him, sitting in the cold water in a daze, he knew that this King Duo Luo would probably stop here for the rest of his life. Everyone who stayed by the young Crown Prince Consort's side was well aware of her methods. Anyone who provoked her definitely wouldn't have a good ending. What's more, this King Duo Luo just had to court death by extending his hand to the little monk Kong Kong. With the little crown princess' protective nature, she definitely wouldn't let him go, even if this King Duo Luo hadn't done anything yet. Chapter 5133. The little monk's round eyes slightly brightened, and he lowered his head in embarrassment. In his small heart, he actually yearned for his parents, but he had never mentioned it to anyone before. Now that happiness had suddenly descended upon him, he inexplicably felt that it was unreal. Benefactress was going to become the little monk's mother. The little monk was secretly delighted, and his head involuntarily rubbed against Emolien's body. He turned to look at Arbor and asked, "Benefactress, haven't you always despised this little monk for being talkative?" Arbor said expressionlessly, "You are indeed talkative. But being talkative is also your specialty." Arbor followed up with another sentence. She didn't know if it was because she was used to his nagging, but sometimes without the little monk's nagging, she actually felt a little unaccustomed. The little monk replied with an "oh." His round eyes glanced at Arbor, and then at Emolien. Benefactress's bandit husband. Emolien resisted the urge to knock his little head, and said speechlessly, "Don't you find it tiring to say such a long string of words?" He always crowned everyone with the title of benefactress last time. His father-in-law even complained to him, asking him why little Master Kong Kong always called him benefactress's father. Wasn't he tired of nagging like this? What could Emolien say? He could only comfort his father-in-law that he was already considered good. For example, he might even add the word bandit on top of benefactress's husband. At that time, his father-in-law looked at him with a melancholy expression, and Emolien would never forget it. The child still had to be educated, and education had to start with changing the way he addressed him. From now on, you have to change all those nonsensical titles from before. Do you understand? Emolien lowered his head to look at the little monk, and said with a serious face, "In the future, you have to call Jojo's father and mother, and grandfather and grandmother. Don't keep calling him benefactress's father and benefactress's mother. It sounds like you're scolding people. It's also not elegant. Understand?" The little monk nodded reluctantly. "Benefactress's husband, why are you so demanding of this little monk? Look at the benefactress, she has never asked me to do this or that. You have to learn more from the benefactress." Emolien had the urge to slap this little monk to death. "Enough!" He roared at him, and threw him into the hands of the monk Kong Yin. "The matter is settled. We are going back to the half-moon cliff. You bring the little monk back to the temple first. Recently, he has been neglecting his studies in the morning and evening. Master Kong Yin should give him some guidance." The little monk widened his round eyes in shock. He pointed at Emolien with his little finger and said in a trembling voice, Benefactress's bandit husband. You are actually such a vengeful person. He had just said a few unpleasant things about him, and now, he was taking revenge on him. The female benefactor's bandit husband was really a bad person. Arbor was speechless. Every time he saw the two of them bickering, he felt that the crown prince was like an idiot. His IQ was almost as high as the little monk's. Men haha. Arbor turned to look at Master Kong Yin. Do you want to spend some time with Kong Kong? That's good too. Kong Yin smiled kindly. Kong Kong, who was used to living a good life, couldn't help but cry out with a bitter face. Benefactress, are you going to throw this little monk away now? Kong Yin rubbed the child's head and said in a disappointed tone. Kong Kong, it seems like you don't want to return to the temple with this old monk at all. The little monk quickly said, That's not it, master. She turned to look at Arbor. Chapter 5134. Her round little face was filled with anticipation. Benefactress, you must remember to come and pick me up in 2 days. Arbor nodded, and the little monk finally turned to look at First Elder Kong Yin in satisfaction. Master, let's go. Heartless little thing. Kong Yin could not resist scolding him with a smile. This little imp just loved to follow his benefactress around. They hadn't parted yet, but he already wanted to confirm a return date. He was only willing to leave after obtaining the benefactress's promise. After the two people left, Arbor turned to look at Emolien and said, I've already obtained the three-headed dog's blood, so I've been waiting for this batch of revival Bodhi grass to mature these past few days. It's about ready now. The matters here can be considered settled, so I plan to return to Splendid Villa and enter closed-door cultivation for a few days. This time, I have to wholeheartedly immerse myself in concocting the revival Bodhi pill. Arbor said with a frown. It's not easy to challenge a saint-rank pill above your level, and you can face failure at any time. So for this period of time, I know. Emolien grasped his hand. You can enter closed-door cultivation by yourself. I'll wait for your return at the villa. Xiaomu gave a MHM and nodded vigorously. On the other hand, Emolien glanced at her hesitantly. After calling out Xiao Xiao, he paused as if he wanted to say something. I know what you want to say. From his expression, Xiaomu knew what he was likely to say next. You want me to treat the matter of saving Morong Sun with a normal heart. You're afraid that even if I wholeheartedly immerse myself in it, there's a possibility of failure when the time comes, right? Don't worry, so many years have already passed. I've already accepted what I need to accept. Arbor looked at him seriously and said, This is my final effort as a disciple. If Heaven's will is like this, then when the time comes I still won't be able to save her, Arbor said gloomily. Then I'll accept my fate. Although she was sad, compared to the pain of being forcibly torn apart several years ago, she had mentally prepared herself now. In the future she would be able to bear it. All right, it's good that you understand. Emolien heaved a sigh of relief and nodded slightly. She reached out to hold her hand and said, Don't worry and go refine the pills. I'll take care of the matters at home. Arbor nodded. The two of them hurried back to the city and rushed back to the half-moon cliff. It was only at night that the news reached the Great Emperor. The Great Emperor's expression was inexplicable. He raised his head and glanced at the secret guard who reported, How is the person in the dungeon now? Completely stupid. The shadow guard lowered his head and said, This subordinate has checked repeatedly and confirmed that there are no traces of disguise. Yes, His Excellency the Great Emperor sighed and said, My son is still soft-hearted after all. The secret guard swallowed his saliva and didn't dare to reply. However, the Great Emperor could not help but glance at him when he saw that he wanted to say something. Pumpkin, if you have something to say, just say it. The secret guard gathered his courage and said, Your Majesty, this subordinate feels that you might have some misunderstandings about the Crown Prince. The Great Emperor raised his eyebrows and looked like he wanted to hear more. The secret guard said, This subordinate has checked. That medicinal powder is very stimulating. Not only will it cause King Duo Luo to lose his voice and become severely retarded in the short term, as time passes, his insides will burn and the organs inside will probably die. This painful process may last for 1 to 2 years before he completely returns to normal. The great emperor was stunned. Is that so? Chapter 5135. Yes. That secret guard nodded vigorously, with an affirmative expression. Then this powder is my son's? It's not, your majesty. The secret guard said expressionlessly. According to this subordinate's investigation, this powder was personally ground by the crown princess. The emperor nodded somewhat dazedly, then suddenly inhaled. But my son didn't add fuel to the fire? This didn't seem like him at all. His Highness the Crown Prince secretly ordered that subordinate named Xiao Yi to cripple all of King Duo Luo's spiritual power and cultivation after feeding him the powder, turning him into a complete cripple. Only then did the emperor nod with a pleased expression. That's more like my son. My son is such a vicious person. He looks so harmless on the surface, but he's done so many ruthless things. Seeing the emperor's current expression, the secret guard couldn't help but twitch his mouth. It seemed like the crown prince's methods were vicious. And he was especially fond of the emperor? His Highness the Crown Prince seemed to have even said that this King Duo Luo was guilty of the most heinous crimes. If it weren't for the fact that the emperor wanted to keep him alive, he would have been sent on his way long ago. The emperor nodded with a gratified expression. That's what my son would do. The secret guard especially wanted to complain. Can you not praise your son so shamelessly? This doesn't seem to be a good thing. The emperor praised a few times with a face full of approval, then turned to ask the secret guard. Why haven't you left after reporting? The secret guard was truly speechless. He lowered his head and rolled his eyes. Your Majesty, then this subordinate will take his leave. All right. The emperor waved his hand and suddenly stopped him. Hey, wait. Right, that Zhu Fei, where is he now? The secret guard bowed and said, I've arranged for him to be in a courtyard in the south of the city. Your Majesty, do you want to see this person? If this Zhu Fei hadn't surrendered to the emperor and contributed the firearms distribution map of East and West 12th Street, perhaps this Dragon Flame City would have been in a state of panic for a while. A trace of coldness flitted through the emperor's eyes. No need. At this moment there wasn't the slightest bit of warmth in his eyes, only indifference and coldness. Go, take care of this person in secret, don't leave any traces. The secret guard nodded, and didn't ask any more questions. He accepted the order and immediately left. How could he spare someone like Zhu Fei? In front of benefits, he could repay kindness with enmity and treat King Duo Luo. No one knew if this person would completely betray them in the future. Such a despicable person who forgets righteousness at the sight of profit naturally couldn't be left alive. Arbor was in seclusion in the domain of stars for a long time. When he finished concocting the soul-returning Bodhi pill, he opened his eyes. The pill in his hand was covered in golden light. It shone dazzlingly and eagerly wanted to fly out. Only after sticking a sealing talisman on the pill did Xiao Mu manage to stabilize it in her palm. Xiao closed her eyes and entered a state of advancement once again. It was unknown whether it was due to her previous accumulation or not. Yi Chun and the others followed the scent of the medicine. They saw the little fellow sitting in front of the fine sky jade dragon with her eyes closed. As she breathed in and out, endless divine power was absorbed into her body from all directions. Each time Jojo advanced, there was a feeling of broadening people's horizons. It was the same at this moment. Arbor absorbed divine power for more than half a month on the main planet, before it was enough to support her this time's leveling up. By the time she opened her eyes, more than a month had passed on the main planet. The little stoic's eyes were bright, and her fair face had a bit of rosy color. She appeared to be full of vigor. Yi Chun couldn't help but tsk lightly. You leveled up again. Chapter 5136. Watching Jojo advance was like watching her drink water. It was so fast that it made people want to sigh uncontrollably. Everyone said that it wasn't easy for female cultivators to cultivate. It would be even more troublesome, especially if they were unlucky enough to encounter the 5 spirits reincarnation or advance during pregnancy. A single mishap, and they might be struck to death by heavenly law. This time, Jojo successfully advanced from 7th level Divine Practitioner to 8th level Divine Practitioner. She skipped over the minor realms of initial success, phenomenal success, and peak. The problem was that she seemed to have advanced not long ago. Besides, it was already good enough that other people's cultivation didn't regress during pregnancy. Many people found it difficult to advance even half a step. Yet she, as expected, Jojo was different from the rest. Arbor glanced at the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, who wanted to say something, but was hesitating. She waved her hand and said, "Speak." The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's mouth twitched. He didn't know if it was his imagination, but he felt like the little stoic's queenly aura was becoming stronger and stronger. She waved her small hand, and a queenly aura that exuded dignity without being angry assaulted him. "Jojo, is it strenuous to advance?" "It's not strenuous at all." Arbor looked at him in confusion. She raised her hand and looked left and right. She abruptly sent out a palm strike, forming a divine power vortex in the air. Soon, this power was pulled back by her again, and the divine power dispersed around her body and vanished into nothingness. Even Ma Shurchin couldn't help but exclaim in admiration at this kind of willful control over divine power. "Jojo, I feel like there's absolutely no one else in the world who has this kind of control over divine power." Ma Shurchin wasn't stingy with her praise. Arbor was overjoyed and nodded her small head. "Not bad." Holy Sun Mayan, who had rushed over to watch the show after hearing the news, said indifferently, "Since she's pregnant, then she should recuperate properly." In other words, she didn't need to be in a hurry to advance during this critical period. The little stoic, who was used to rebuking people, said expressionlessly, "I've been recuperating all this time. I just feel like my cultivation keeps rising in my sleep, and I'm about to advance when the conditions are right." Mayan, why did he inexplicably not want to talk to this stoic? He couldn't even speak 3 sentences with the stoic before she shut him up. "Follow the will of the heavens," Arbor added. "I have to go out and meet the heavenly axiom. I wonder if it will give me a 5 spirits experience this time." "I don't think so," Holy Sun Mayan said expressionlessly. "During the 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation, it was not willing to strike you, let alone now." Yuan Shurchin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I think what the Holy Sun said makes a lot of sense. Jojo, why don't we just leave?" Arbor shook his head. "Facing is a matter of attitude. It doesn't matter if it comes or not. I can't avoid it. I have to face it head on. Let it come." He Chun and Holy Sun Mi Yin twitched their lips at the same time. The two people speechlessly looked at the little stoic. The little girl's face was full of fighting spirit as she rushed out of the star field in a hurry. "I think she is going to be disappointed," Holy Sun Mi Yin said expressionlessly. "I think so too." A moment later, Wei Zichin's personal maidservant, Xiaoyan, hastily ran to the forecourt to find Emo Lian. Ignoring that Prince Emo was talking to second Uncle Qiao, she walked up and bowed before saying, "Madam wants His Highness the Crown Prince to quickly go to the inner courtyard to take a look." Eldest Miss seems to have come out of seclusion, but her expression is a bit off. "What's off?" Emo Lian's heart skipped a beat. Chapter 5137. Wei Zichin was extremely anxious. Ever since her daughter went into closed-door cultivation 3 days ago, she had been feeling uneasy and unable to let go. Now her daughter had finally come out of closed-door cultivation. But from the start, she had been pointing at the sky and the earth, shouting something at the cloudless blue sky. She came over from the other end of the long corridor and discovered this situation. It was only when she got closer that she heard her daughter shouting, "Come, come, come. Come for what?" Wei Zichin walked over with a dumbfounded expression and hurriedly sent her capable maidservant to the front yard to invite His Highness the Crown Prince over. She wasn't proficient in cultivation and didn't know what was going on with her daughter, but she felt that something was amiss. She had to invite His Highness the Crown Prince over for her to be at ease. Wei Zichin walked over and cautiously called out, "Jojo." At first, Arbor didn't hear, but after Wei Zichin called out a few more times, Arbor turned her head, her little face rosy. She looked at her mother and grinned. "Mother." Wei Zichin saw that her daughter was fine and relaxed. "Jojo, what are you doing?" Arbor had been shouting for so long and was already tired. She took the handkerchief from Kai Chi and wiped the sweat on her forehead. She waved her hand nonchalantly, It's nothing, Mother. If you don't want to come, then forget it. Let's go to the living room. This heavenly Tao didn't come when it was supposed to. But when it wasn't supposed to, it was always blindly prattling. She had had enough. Arbor hugged her mother's arm and pursed her little lips. Mother, daughter's cultivation level increased slightly. I thought the heavenly Tao would test me, but I didn't expect nothing at all. Wei Ziqing nodded and looked up at the cloudless sky. It doesn't look like it's going to rain immediately. Jojo, you can cultivate, but don't push yourself too hard. You have to remember that you're pregnant with the imperial grandson. Arbor looked at her mother blankly. I didn't push myself. I was just sleeping, and my cultivation level inexplicably increased. And then I'm about to advance. The group of maidservants behind her couldn't help but roll their eyes when they heard this. The little crown princess was blatantly showing off. He was showing off, right? No one could cultivate so easily and freely. What did he mean by his cultivation inexplicably increased just by sleeping? Was this a joke? Wei Ziqing could not help but look at her daughter speechlessly. In the end, she could only say dryly, "It's good that it's not hard." When the crown prince heard that his wife had come out of seclusion and rushed over, he couldn't help but cover his face. His wife was coming in the backyard. It was really shocking. He hoped that his mother-in-law was not frightened. Emma Lien had just stepped into the backyard when she heard a loud bang. A bolt of purple-red lightning in the sky suddenly smashed into the ground not far away from his feet. He was so scared that he instinctively retracted his legs and took a big step back. The little stoic was about to help her mother into the hall when she suddenly heard a clap of thunder coming from behind them. She quickly turned around. Wei Ziqing also jumped in fright and quickly turned her head to take a look. She saw His Highness the Crown Prince's innocent and pitiful expression as he stared at the mother and daughter pair with his beautiful phoenix eyes. Arbor couldn't help but want to laugh. He looked up at the sky, then at hubby, and exasperatedly shook his head. It's sick. This heavenly law was truly an unreliable fellow. She had waited for it for the better part of a day, but it didn't strike a single bolt of lightning. Now that it saw hubby, it suddenly pointed the spearhead at him. Was it trying to infuriate her? So it wanted to take hubby down a notch. Chapter 5138. Was it really alright to take it so unreliable? Xiao Mu hastily walked up to her pitiful husband and patted him placatingly. Don't be scared, it's just a paper tiger. It doesn't dare to really attack you. So it's just going to smash next to your feet to scare you. Wifey, why does it attack me when you provoke it? Arbor pondered for 3 seconds before saying seriously, it's probably because it doesn't dare to provoke me. His Highness the Crown Prince. My wifey is so arrogant, what should I do? Jojo, then you have to protect me well. Arbor nodded vigorously and patted his chest with a serious expression. The next time it dares to scare you, we'll go up to the sky and blast a hole in it. Wei Ziqing's mouth twitched as she looked up at the sky. It was still the same clear sky that seemed to have been washed clean by clear water. There was not the slightest shadow of thunder and lightning. She hurried forward and said to her daughter and son-in-law, "It should be fine now, right? Was Xiaomo affected by the lightning?" Actually, how could anything happen to the crown prince? He was just used to acting pitiful in front of his wifey, and hiding behind her to act coquettishly, seeing the lingering fear on his mother-in-law's face. The crown prince hurried forward with a smile. Mother, it's fine. I was just caught off guard, and was startled by the sound of the lightning. It didn't hit me anywhere, don't worry. Wei Ziqing saw that the crown prince was dressed in white, and had black hair. His entire body was untainted, and he really didn't look like he was roasted by the lightning. Only then did she relax and nod with a smile. The three of them chatted, and laughed as they walked into the living room. Wei Ziqing suddenly remembered something, and turned to her daughter. Jojo, you said you were going into seclusion for 3 days to refine pills. That pill? Arbor was silent for a few seconds before nodding. It's already a success. Then did Peak Master Morong? Arbor shook his head. No, I haven't given it to her yet. Wei Ziqing held her daughter's hand with a comforting expression. Jojo, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Right, Mom is right. Emma Lien hastily interjected from the side. Xiao, just do your best in everything. Wei Ziqing nodded with certainty. That's right. Arbor pursed her lips at the two of them. She understood the logic, but it was difficult to put it into practice. Her heart was filled with hope. However, he was also afraid that this ray of light would eventually be drowned by the darkness. Don't worry. Emolien held her hand and gave her some encouragement. I believe in Jojo. Your alchemy skills are the best in the world. If even the pill you concocted doesn't work, then Morong-sun truly had no hope. I have so much confidence in you. So how can you not have this confidence yourself? Looking at her husband's relaxed tone, Arbor reluctantly nodded at him and took a deep breath. Don't fear failure and move forward courageously. I'll feed Master the pill in a bit. Okay. Wei Ziqing felt comforted when she saw that her daughter's mentality seemed to have relaxed. You were in seclusion for more than 2 days, which means you spent about a month in the star domain to advance this time. Mother, this isn't considered long, Emolien said to her mother-in-law. The further you go, the longer it takes to advance, until you enter the transcendent realm and enter seclusion to cultivate and advance. 1 or 2 years might not even be considered long. Thankfully, time flows 12 times faster in the star domain. Chapter 5139. 1 or 2 years, which is equivalent to 1 or 2 months in the outside world. Wei Ziqing sighed with emotion, and there was a trace of rejoicing. For a cultivator, this was considered an extremely short period of time. Her daughter's star domain was truly a natural treasure, saving them a lot of time on the path of cultivation. The three of them entered the hall and sat down. Wei Ziqing suddenly thought of something and said, A few days ago, the Countess of Huainan came to visit and sent me an invitation card. The Count of Huainan's estate holds the Butterfly Night Banquet every year, and that day coincides with her 50th birthday. Therefore, they plan to hold the banquet at noon together with the Butterfly Night Banquet in the evening. Wei Ziqing held Arbor's hand and said, The Countess of Huainan specially came to visit, and Mother was too embarrassed to reject her, so she planned to go there. Arbor nodded. It was naturally good for Mother to make more friends, and Arbor would not object to her attending such banquets. Although to her, banquets were never good, and all banquets were too boring. But she was her, and Mother was Mother. If Mother wanted to attend, then she should attend. As long as she took precautions to ensure Mother's safety, it would be fine. Your sister hasn't come out of seclusion yet. Wei Ziqing sighed. Otherwise, this little naughty monkey would definitely not miss such a lively event. Arbor's brows moved slightly, and she said expressionlessly, Then I'll go with Mother. After saying that, she almost bit her tongue and regretted it a little. Lord Jojo hated to attend boring banquets the most. If not for her mother's melancholy tone, and the fact that she was alone with no one to accompany her, she would not have volunteered. Wei Ziqing could not help but want to laugh. How could she not see her daughter's vexed expression? She patted her daughter's hand and said with a smile, Jojo, you don't have to force yourself. Arbor pursed her lips and muttered in a low voice, It's not particularly forced. Wei Ziqing couldn't help laughing out loud. After dinner, Arbor pulled Emolien into the star area, heading straight to the mountain behind Paradise Star. They stood in front of the ice coffin on the slope of Paradise Star for a long time, until Emolien gently pulled her wrist. Only then did Xiaomu raise her hand. A pill with a hint of golden light slowly flew out from her palm and floated in the air, moving up and down slightly. Because it was suppressed by a sealing talisman, this sacred medicine was very obedient. Arbor took a deep breath and looked back at Emolien. The latter nodded slightly at her, raised his hand, and gently lifted the lid of the crystal coffin and moved it to the side. Xiaomu looked at Morong-sun's unchanging face and took a deep breath before taking a few steps forward. She stuffed the pill into Morong-sun's mouth, her movements slightly trembling. Although her heart was surging like a tidal wave, she pretended to be completely unconcerned on the surface. This pill rapidly melted the moment it entered her mouth. Without any movement, this sacred medicine would naturally take effect in the human body. Arbor and Emolien both squatted in front of the crystal coffin and waited for a while. Emolien reached out to feel Morong-sun's breathing, a hint of joy flitting through her eyes. I think she's breathing. Arbor also hastily tried, and her heart thumped heavily. It wasn't an illusion, and it wasn't as if it was. There really was a faint breath. The little stoic's hands were tightly clasped together. She gently bit her lips and impatiently stared at the silent woman inside the crystal coffin. Chapter 5140. Would Master suddenly open her eyes? If Master opened her eyes, she would be able to see Jojo immediately. At that time, Jojo would definitely punch her and curse her for being a damn liar. Arbor suddenly shook his head. No, I can't hit Master. Even if Master wakes up, her body should be very weak. I can't hit her. Then I can only curse her. Yes, I'll curse her to death. No. I can't curse her to death. I saved her with great difficulty, so I can't let anything happen to her. Just as Chiao Mu's imagination was running wild, Morong Sun quietly laid in the coffin the entire time, quietly exhaling in a barely discernible manner. She did not open her eyes and look at Chiao with a smile as Chiao Mu expected. Hence, she did not give Arbor a chance to properly curse her. Emolian worriedly turned to Arbor. Jojo. Yes. Arbor was not as dispirited and miserable as Emolian imagined. Instead, she turned to look at him with sparkling eyes and comforted him first. It's fine, I know. Master has passed away for many years. Even if she used the soul-returning Bodhi pill to recover her vital signs, I'm afraid it will take some time for her to completely wake up. She will recover. Sir Jojo tightly clenched his fists. I have confidence that I can cure her. This was already a good start. She believed that Master would slowly recover her consciousness. Once she regained her consciousness, her recovery time would accelerate and shorten, because Master was not someone who habitually admitted defeat. She believed that even if there was only a sliver of hope, Master would definitely do her utmost to recover herself. Emolian relaxed and grasped Morong Sun's hand. It's great that you can think it through. Even if Peak Master Morong wakes up in the future, it will probably take some time for her to recover her original cultivation. After all, she was sealed in ice for so many years after the Great Battle, so she probably lost all her cultivation already. Arbor clenched his fists. As long as she can regain her consciousness and slowly wake up, it's only a matter of time before her body recovers. Don't be hasty, she warned herself. Don't be hasty. Although waiting made people anxious, waiting was also a kind of hope in disguise. Everything was fine as long as there was hope. If she couldn't fix it the first time, then she would fix it the second time. If she couldn't fix it the second time, then she would fix it the third time and fourth time. There would be a day when Morong Sun would return to her original state. Just like in Shijio City, he followed behind her and called her his disciple at this moment. She still remembered that she had entered through the window and waved at her with a smile. Disciple, call me master? It will be fine, Arbor told himself. Everything will be fine soon. She had to believe in herself, and she had to believe in her master even more. She had said that she would protect him for the rest of his life. How could she go back on her words? A few days later, a continuous rain swept across the land of Dragon Flame City. Arbor regretted it so much. But who told her to agree to her mother's request in the spur of the moment? She had dug a hole for herself, so she had to jump into it even if she had to cry. Asking her to go out in this kind of weather was practically no different from forcing her to go to the execution ground. She hated rainy days the most. Her shoes would get wet the moment she stepped on them. Wei Ziqin sat in the carriage and stared at her daughter's gloomy stoic face. She wanted to laugh a little. Mother already said that it's fine if you don't come out with us on rainy days. It's fine if Mother attends alone. You have to do what you promised, the little stoic said sulkily. Wei Ziqin almost laughed out loud. Happy New Year, my friends. Everyone, continue to charge forward together. Do your best to protect yourself and resist the virus. Chapter 5141. Her daughter's stoic face could store any emotion. After interacting with her for a long time, one would know that under this stoic expression, there were all kinds of emotions. Happy, depressed, irritated, angry sometimes. It was just a subtle change. Those who were close to her, such as Crown Prince Lien and Wei Ziqin, could see some clues from her small face. Sir Jojo sat upright and still, holding a jar of plums in his hands and popping them into his mouth. I haven't seen Kong Kong in a few days. Since we're going to Count Huainan's estate today, why don't we pick up Kong Kong? Wei Ziqin suggested. Okay. This little imp was a bit annoying, but she was inexplicably unused to not having him nagging beside her. Speaking of Kong Kong, Wei Ziqin couldn't help but sigh. I really didn't expect the little monk Kong Kong to be related to little Mo by blood. Then what's his proper name? The little stoic couldn't help but be taken aback. She really didn't know Kong Kong's proper name. She heard her mother ramble on and asked curiously, Mo Kong Kong? Arbor's mouth twitched, and she suddenly said whimsically, how about I give the little monk a name? As the little monk's foster mother, wasn't it too natural for her to give her son a name? No need, no need. Wei Ziqin repeatedly waved her hand, feeling that she couldn't let her daughter cheat this little grandson of hers. I think we should just call him Mo Kong. It's simple and catchy, Wei Ziqin hastily said. It's easy to write. The little monk was literate and had outstanding literary talent. Wasn't her mother overly worried that the little monk wouldn't know how to write if she changed his name? Arbor pursed her lips and nodded reluctantly. That's fine too. Wei Ziqin chatted with her daughter the entire way, and the carriage soon arrived at the small path in front of Count Huainan's estate. Count Huainan's estate was located in a secluded area in the western part of the city. In front of the door was a small stone path that could only allow one carriage to pass through. The road was a little bumpy, and the whole journey would take about 15 minutes. Those who could receive an invitation from the Duke of Huainan's mansion were mostly the reputable madams and young ladies in Dragon Flame City. There were madams and daughters of officials, as well as young ladies and madams of aristocratic families. Wei Ziqin's carriage was considered to have arrived rather late. When he turned to the gravel road in front of him, the road ahead was already blocked. He could vaguely hear the sound of quarreling coming from the wind. Arbor lifted a corner of the curtain, glanced outside, and immediately threw the curtain down. It was misty outside the window, and she could see the wet raindrops at a glance. Immediately, the little crown princess lost her interest in looking. Wei Ziqin knew her daughter's temperament very well, so she couldn't help but laugh. She also went forward to lift the curtain and looked through the rain for a while. There seems to be a collision between two carriages in front. Soon, the coachman who went to inquire about the news hurriedly came to the window in a straw raincoat and reported, Madam Crown Princess, a carriage in front has turned over, and now it's blocking the road. Wei Ziqin couldn't help but frown. This small stone path was the only way to Count Huainan's mansion. It would be troublesome if it was blocked. Oh my God! What should we do? Just as they were talking, a madam's exclamation came from a carriage behind them. The coachman reported to Wei Ziqin. Looking at the situation, the road behind us is also blocked by an endless stream of carriages. There's no way to turn around. Madam, please wait in the carriage for a while. I'll go ahead to inquire about the news. Thank you for your hard work. Chapter 5142. Don't say that, madam. This old servant is doing his duty. The coachman, wearing a straw raincoat, hurriedly left to scout ahead. Wei Ziqin turned around to glance at Xiao Mu before placating her kindly. Xiao, the Count of Huainan's estate should be sending people out to help maintain order. Let's first settle down and wait. Arbor made an "oh" sound, his face expressionless, but Wei Ziqin knew that his daughter was a bit impatient. I heard that Count Huainan's madam is bedridden all year round. Arbor suddenly said. Then this banquet is? Could it be a concubine of Count Huainan's estate? It's madam who personally organized it. Wei Ziqin hurriedly said. How could such a big banquet be organized by a concubine of the family? It would be rude to outsiders. But it's true that madam's health is not good. Wei Ziqin nodded. I heard that Count Huainan seems to favor a second concubine of the family? It's said that the family's finances are all controlled by this concubine? Wei Ziqin wanted to laugh when she heard this. She glanced at her daughter and nodded. Daughter, mother didn't expect that you would have the temperament of a nosy person. Her daughter expressionlessly looked at her mother and said indifferently, Not at all. It wasn't that she was keen on being a nosy person, but that the little maidservants beside her chattered and casually told her. She basically knew about all the happenings in the family. One family was robbed today, and another family was married tomorrow. Wei Ziqin laughed and took her daughter's hand and patted it twice. Second concubine's surname is Bao, and she also has a daughter. They are indeed very favored in Count Huainan's estate. At this point, Wei Ziqin couldn't help but sigh. Which family didn't have their own problems behind closed doors? Wasn't there a lack of cases of favoring the concubine and neglecting the wife? The more noble the family, the more wives and concubines, the more likely it was that a bowl of water would not be peaceful. Arbor said, "Oh." The mother and daughter were chatting when they suddenly heard two soft knocks coming from outside the carriage. Wei Ziqin lifted the curtain to take a look, and saw that it was a person who looked like a steward. He was currently bowing towards their carriage. Are the crown princess and the madam of the Qiao family in the carriage? This is the wife of Minister Fang of the Ministry of Justice. I have specially come to pay my respects to the crown princess and Madam Qiao. Wei Ziqin looked over from the carriage and saw a middle-aged lady pulling a dignified and elegant young lady out of the carriage together. Braving the rain, they came over to greet them. Wei Ziqin hurriedly said, "Madam Fang, don't be so courteous. It's raining outside. Don't let Madam and Miss catch a cold." Steward quickly helped them into the carriage. Now that the road ahead is blocked, we don't know how long it will take for them to pass through. That middle-aged lady smiled and bowed in the direction of Wei Ziqin and Arbor. "Thank you, Crown Princess and Madam Qiao, for your understanding. There's no need to be so courteous." Wei Ziqin was a bit embarrassed. Seeing that the madams and young ladies in the nearby carriages were about to get out of their carriages to greet them, she hurriedly exhorted loudly, "Everyone, there's no need to be so impatient. It's raining heavily halfway through the journey, so don't be in a hurry to get out of the carriage. It won't be too late to meet again when we reach Count Huainan's residence." The madams and young ladies all thanked the crown princess and Madam Qiao before settling down. Wei Ziqin giggled and patted her expressionless daughter with a smile, softly muttering, "Looks like they were all scared by you." Arbor snorted. "When did I scare them?" She didn't sleep well yesterday and was muddle-headed the entire day. Tomorrow, before 12 a.m., she would make up for 2 more chapters. Chapter 5143. As long as these people didn't provoke her, they could get along well with each other, couldn't they? She wasn't a bipolar patient. Why would she cause trouble wherever she went? In fact, most of the time, she wasn't the one who made trouble. However, if others made trouble in front of her, she wouldn't be afraid of trouble. Wei Ziqin patted her daughter's little hand with a smile. She knew her daughter very well. In fact, she was the easiest person to get along with. As long as you didn't provoke her casually, she wouldn't take the initiative to talk to you for 100 years. She had been passive since she was a child, and wasn't good at making friends with others first. And once she was annoyed, she would fight back fiercely. In recent years, his youngest daughter, Lin had also developed a temperament of, "If someone offends me, I'll definitely kill them." Perhaps because she was influenced by what she saw Madam. The coachman came back in the rain and whispered to Wei Ziqin through the window. "I heard it. It's the concubine's daughter of Assistant Minister Zhang of the Ministry of Justice. Her carriage collided with Infanta Tao's. Now the second concubine of Duke Huainan's mansion is dealing with this matter with some maids, and it may take some time. Madam and the crown princess can stay in the carriage at ease. When the road ahead is clear, we can enter the mansion." Arbor frowned slightly. How did they collide? It seems that Infanta Tao's carriage wanted to move forward and accidentally collided with Assistant Minister Zhang's daughter's carriage. Commandery Princess Tao's carriage turned over, and Commandery Princess Tao was frightened. "Infanta Tao." Arbor looked puzzled. There are 3 Infanta Tao in the royal family. Everyone knows Infanta Wushuang. As for the other 2, one is Infanta Xingping, the daughter of Princess Hongyao. She married to Tsangzhou 5 years ago. The other one is Infanta Fu, the youngest granddaughter of Great Elder Princess. She is 9 years old this year. She has been in poor health since she was a child, and never attends banquets. Nobody knows her. There were very few princesses and infanta in the royal family of Mo, who were infeft with territories. Who was this Infanta Tao? The coachman was surprised and said, I heard second concubine call her Princess Tao. Oh yes, that's the princess of King Jing's mansion. With that said, Arbor remembered. So it's her daughter. Who is she? Wei Ziqing asked curiously. He's sick in the head, Arbor said sarcastically. King Jing's Shikang's brain wasn't very good either. In any case, his entire family wasn't like normal people. Hearing her daughter's words, Wei Ziqing knew that her daughter didn't like Princess Tao. This Princess Tao, she's not a princess. Arbor curled his lips. She's Shikang's sister. Seeing his mother's confused look, Arbor gave his mother a rare explanation. Shikang is His Majesty's adopted son. His father and younger sister's family returned to Zheng King's mansion after he became successful. With that said, Wei Ziqing understood instantly. She nodded and said, so that's how it is. Then this Infanta Tao. Oh, that's what some people call themselves. Arbor couldn't help but roll her eyes. She didn't expect that Su Shi Tao, who had been reprimanded by the crown prince for her improper conduct, still dared to use Zheng King's mansion's name and call herself a princess. Arbor shook her head speechlessly. I've never seen such a shameless woman. Chapter 5144. It was said that women were thin-skinned, and all had a sense of shame. However, in Arbor's opinion, this Su Shitao didn't have the slightest sense of shame. All day long, her vanity caused her mischief, and she acted in a haughty manner. She was clearly nothing, but she had to put on airs everywhere she went. She didn't know whether to say that she was ignorant, or that the Prince of Zheng was utterly ignorant. Arbor shook her head, and chatted with her mother in the carriage. The coachman suddenly trotted over and said, Crown Princess, madam, the road ahead is clear. We can go now. Wei Ziqing nodded and pulled her daughter to sit properly. Soon the carriage began to move forward, but the speed wasn't very fast. After about 7 minutes, they finally arrived at the main entrance of Count Huainan's estate. Before Wei Ziqing and Arbor alighted from the carriage, they saw a black-robed old mama quickly walk over with an umbrella in one hand. She hurriedly curtsied and went up to greet them. Madam is slightly unwell, and specially instructed this old servant to wait here for Madam Qiao and the crown princess. Then she turned and nodded to the coachman. I'll have to trouble you to drive the carriage directly into the front courtyard. Please follow me. Arbor sat down again. Just as the mother and daughter's carriage was about to drive in with the old mama, they heard an extremely sharp and untimely scolding sound. Why can their carriage drive in but ours can't? Could it be that our commandery princess is inferior to others? The black-robed old mama stood in front of that troublesome servant girl and shouted angrily, Who are you? That servant girl was very unreasonable. At this time, she didn't even hold the umbrella, and stood in the rain with her hands on her hips. She shouted at the old mama, Are your dog eyes blind? You don't even recognize our commandery Princess Tao. What, you unruly old servant, are you thinking of rebelling? The black-robed old mama was so angry that her face turned red. She had seen the invitation card and guest list sent by Madam. She really had never heard of this commandery Princess Tao. She really couldn't be blamed for being ignorant and inexperienced. At this moment, Su Shitao was sitting in a carriage with the curtains rolled up. A servant was crouching beside the carriage, waiting for this young lady to alight. Su Shitao looked coldly at the old nanny in green clothes. His expression was gloomy and uncertain. Then he retracted the leg he had stretched out. At this moment, he was still sitting in the carriage motionless. One had to earn one's reputation. As the eldest miss of King Jing's residence, which part of her was inferior to others? Why could other people's carriages drive directly into the Duke of Huainan's mansion? But she had to get off the carriage at the public passage and walk into the mansion with an umbrella like those madams and young misses. Although they had only walked for a few minutes, the symbol of their status was immediately different. All the carriages that could drive into the Duke of Huainan's mansion, which one of them wasn't a madam of an official, or a miss of an aristocratic family. What did Su Shitao owe him? She was also the eldest young miss of King Jing's residence, all right? At this moment, a middle-aged woman, Su Nyang, who was wearing a peacock green long dress and a golden cloth in her hair, walked up swaggeringly. She covered her mouth and smiled at the old nanny in green clothes. So it's Nanny Lu, Madam's personal servant. It's really wrong of you to do this. This is Commandery Princess Tao of King Zheng's residence. You can't be so rude to others. Why aren't you kneeling to greet Commandery Princess Tao? The old nanny in green clothes was stunned. Just as she was about to reply, she heard the young crown princess sneer through the curtains. Commandery Princess Tao is so imposing. You dare to show off in front of this consort? Aren't you mighty? Su Shitao was shocked. Chapter 5146. Seeing Su Qianxi's sorry figure drenched from head to toe in the rain, she immediately lost interest in continuing to chat with her. Such a brainless thing was not qualified to be Jojo's opponent. She had no interest in teaching this person a lesson. Ordering Saishio to lower the curtain, the young crown princess waved her hand for the carriage driver to leave with the blue-robed nanny. The old nanny surnamed Lu had witnessed this scene from beginning to end. She already had some understanding of the young crown princess's temperament. She knew that although this crown princess looked young, she was definitely not someone to be trifled with. She did not dare to be negligent, and led the young crown princess's carriage into the Count of Huainan's fu. Madame Count of Huainan personally welcomed the two in the main hall, and introduced a tall young woman to Wei Ziqin with a smile. Lu Ying, come and greet the crown princess and Madame Qiao. Lu Ying, the eldest legitimate daughter of Count of Huainan's fu, stepped forward and politely bowed to Arbor and Wei Ziqin. She said with a smile, the crown princess and Madame Qiao's presence at mother's birthday banquet brings light to our entire count's fu. Wei Ziqin said with a smile, no need to be so courteous. On the other side, the second madam of the count's fu, Madame Bao, hurriedly directed a few servant girls to help the dirty Su Shitao up. The second madam frowned, and endured the strange smell coming from Su Shitao's body. She smiled brightly. Miss Su, why don't you come into the fu with me to change clothes first? Your figure is similar to my daughter's. If you don't mind, you should be able to wear clothes. Su Shitao originally wanted to refuse and say that she disliked wearing other people's second-hand clothes and wanted to return home. But after thinking about how she had been tricked into such a sorry state, her desire for revenge couldn't help but stir. She gnashed her teeth in hatred, but she couldn't open her mouth to speak. Madame Bao was a little confused. She glanced at Su Shitao and asked tentatively, does Miss Su have other plans? In fact, Madame Bao wanted Su Shitao to return to Prince Zheng's mansion as soon as possible. Wouldn't it be awkward if everyone stayed behind to face each other? Unexpectedly, Su Shitao agreed, and followed her into the count's residence to change his clothes. Madame Bao thought that she had finally learned her lesson after being taught a lesson. However, she never expected that Su Shitao had stayed behind with the intention of taking revenge on that crown princess. Su Shitao didn't say anything on the surface, but he was actually filled with hatred in his heart. Before that barbaric crown princess came, second concubine had been so respectful to her that she didn't need anyone to teach her how to address her as Princess Tao. But now, although she hated those who changed sides, the most hateful person was still the crown princess who didn't give her any face. In the eyes of this crown princess, was her Prince Zheng's residence really that unbearable? It was as if there was no need to care about him at all. Filled with resentment, Princess Tao was dragged away by Madame Bao to change her clothes. Wei Ziqin and Madame Count Huainan chatted for a while before walking out hand in hand. Madame Count Huainan said as she spoke, I'll introduce you to a few friends. The two of them walked out on their own, and left the young crown prince consort behind. Arbor looked at his mother's back in a daze. He pursed his lips, and turned his head to see Fong Luiying looking at him with a smile. I heard that the crown princess is a heaven-grade alchemist. Could you give Luiying some pointers? Tomorrow, I'll make up for 2 more chapters. Chapter 5148. Crown Princess, did I grasp the pill refinement method incorrectly? The little stoic also didn't know how to explain it to her. If she told the truth, she was afraid it would dampen her enthusiasm. But if she told a lie, it didn't suit her personality. Hence, she simply changed the topic and said, "If you start learning basic pharmacology, you should be able to improve more. You can go to a pill shop to take a look and buy some basic pharmacology books. You can start by self-studying step by step." Fong Luing listened earnestly and nodded repeatedly, as if she had taken the little stoic's words to heart. "Your mother took the body-strengthening pill, but it's not very useful now. When I first saw your mother, I thought her complexion was slightly sallow, perhaps due to spleen deficiency or eczema. But when I saw her again today, I discovered that her glabella is yellow with a tinge of black. This is a sign of being poisoned." "What?" Fong Luing lowered her voice and exclaimed. "Crown Princess, you're saying my mother is poisoned?" The little Crown Princess nodded with certainty. "She is poisoned and it's quite severe. It should be the kind of poison that has accumulated in her body over a long period of time and hasn't completely erupted yet. That's why she only looks weak." Fong Luing was both alarmed and furious, and her body actually tottered. She didn't expect that it wasn't that her mother's body wasn't well, but that someone had ulterior motives and poisoned her over a long period of time? "But my mother has been receiving treatment for a long period of time. Why didn't the physician say that?" Fong Luing trailed off when she reached this point. She wasn't truly stupid and naturally understood that if the physician was intentionally concealing it, then it meant that the physician was colluding with the person who poisoned her. "I have a bottle of self-made all-purpose antidote pills. Give one to your mother every 3 days, and you'll see results after 3 times. If the results aren't good, I'll give it to your mother at that time." Arbor added, "But normally, as long as it's not a poison pill refined from sacred rank herbs, it's basically detoxifying." Fong Luing thanked him profusely and reached out to take it. She was just short of kneeling down and kowtowing to the little Crown Princess. Arbor waved his hand for her to stand up. "Do you still want to learn pill refinement?" "Yes." Fong Luing nodded. "Even if I'm not talented, I still want to read more medical books. Although I'm stupid, I'll learn for 2 or 3 years if other people learn for a year. There will be a day when I should also have some small achievements." Arbor pursed his lips. He took a piece of paper and wrote down a series of book titles for her. "Follow this list and go to the pill house to buy books. Read them one by one. Even if you memorize them by rote, you'll still be able to memorize them. When the time comes, you can sort out all the questions you don't understand and ask me one by one." Fong Luing beamed with joy as she took the book list and nodded repeatedly. "Thank you, Crown Princess. Thank you, Crown Princess. Is young Miss here?" A gentle voice came from outside the courtyard. Fong Luing hurriedly kept the book list in her inner world. She turned to Arbor and said in a low voice, "From the sound of it, it seems to be second sister's servant. Crown Princess, please wait for a moment. I'll go out and take a look." Arbor grunted and waved his hand nonchalantly. He casually picked up the pill furnace that Fong Luing had placed on the table and touched it up and down. Although Fong Luing didn't know how to refine pills, this furnace was still a spirit tool. Fong Luing couldn't help but smile. "This pill furnace is quite a coincidence. I accidentally found it in the market. I didn't expect it to be such a good spirit tool." Chapter 5149. As expected, your dog's hit luck is pretty good, Arbor thought inwardly. She then heard that servant girl's voice urgently ring out again. "Eldest miss, this servant is coming in now." Creak. Fong Luing pulled open the double doors with all her might with a sullen face and strode out. She blocked the doorway and coldly glanced at that maidservant who was sticking her head out to look around. "What are you looking at? What are you doing in my pill refinement room when you don't have any rules?" The maidservant hung her head and inwardly pursed her lips in disdain. She thought, "If it weren't for my family's miss telling me to coax you over, who do you think would be willing to come to your crappy pill refinement room that's riddled with dangers? This damned place would explode at the slightest provocation." All the servants in the estate had always kept a respectful distance from this damned place. They had always stayed as far away as possible from this damned place. Did you think she liked coming here? If it weren't for the maidservant's eyes swiveled, and she walked up to greet Fong Luing with a grin. She said with a smile, "Eldest miss, This servant came under orders to invite eldest Miss and the Crown Princess to Willow Garden together. The banquet hasn't started yet. My family's Miss has invited many patrician families' young misses to Willow Garden to admire the koi. Fong Luiying looked disinterested and waved her hand. No need, I still have several pills to refine. That maidservant couldn't resist rolling her eyes and suppressing her bellyful of disdain. She carefully smiled and said flatteringly, "Then you can refine pills at any time. My family's Miss said that it's rare for so many older and younger sisters to gather together. Hopefully, eldest Miss won't neglect these guests. Besides, if you don't go, then the Crown Princess might want to go take a look." "Not going." The young Crown Prince Consort's crisp words immediately made that last swallow back all the words she had yet to say. This Crown Princess was truly unreasonable. She had already spoken to this extent, but she actually flatly refused. This really was not giving her family's Miss any face. If the little stoic knew this maidservant's unspoken criticism, she would definitely sneer and retort, "Face? How much weight is your family's second Miss worth? She still wants me to give her face, huh?" Servant Xiao Mian greets the Crown Princess. That servant girl nimbly scuttled forward. Separated by the door, eldest Miss Fong Luiying hurriedly bowed to Arbor. "Crown Princess, our Willow Courtyard's pond has recently had quite a few precious species of koi fish." The second young miss was thinking. At this moment, the rain had stopped and the sky had brightened up. "I'll accompany the ladies to the Willow Garden, if the Crown Princess can honor me." "Is there something wrong with your ears? This consort already said that this consort won't honor you." This consort's words once again made the servant girl swallow her words. Fong Luiying was speechless. If it weren't for the fact that the little Crown Princess was in the room behind her, Miss Fong would have burst out laughing. He didn't expect the Crown Princess to be such a person. Her frankness and straightforwardness were simply adorable. The girl called Xiao Mian felt her face heat up. The Crown Princess's merciless words were simply a slap to her family's Miss's face. She really didn't give her Miss any face at all. Xiao Mian was here to invite someone. Asking the Crown Princess to go was secondary. But Miss said that she must invite eldest Mississippi. If she couldn't invite eldest Miss over now, she wouldn't be able to escape a beating either. That would be miserable. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but feel a bit flustered. Chapter 51-51. What does Miss Li mean? Fong Mingyue maintained a stiff smile and secretly gritted her teeth. Did these legitimate daughters come together to slap her in the face? This Miss Li was only the legitimate daughter of the Honglu Temple's deputy minister, a lowly official. How dare she look down on a girl from the Duke of Huainan's mansion? Fong Mingyue was not a broad-minded person, and she had already exploded from Miss Li's words. The noble lady beside Miss Li hurriedly tugged at her foolish best friend and said to Fong Mingyue with an apologetic smile, "Miss Li is outspoken and didn't mean to ridicule second Mississippi Miss Fong. Please don't think too much." Fong Mingyue said with a fake smile, "So it's the legitimate daughter of Censor Jiang. I've always heard that Miss Jiang and Miss Li are good friends. You two are really close and inseparable." Miss Jiang smiled gently and didn't say anything. Miss Li was also tugged by her, so she didn't say anything. Fong Mingyue made a mental note of them and turned to look at the girl leaning on the edge of the pond. "Your Highness, what do you think of our pond?" "Not bad." Princess Tao raised her head proudly and pointed at a koi fish not far away. "Our mansion also has that kind of golden koi, and this and that. We have all of these. Overall, the koi fish in your pond are 10% or 20% of the size of those in my mansion." Everyone was speechless when they heard this. Princess Tao's EQ was really low. It was enough that she praised Prince Zheng's mansion in different ways, but she didn't need to say that the koi fish in their pond were less than 10% or 20% of those in Prince Zheng's mansion. Fong Mingyue's face darkened, and she couldn't help but call Su Shitao an idiot in her heart. If it weren't for Prince Zheng's mansion, she, as the daughter of the Duke of Huainan's mansion, wouldn't have to lower her voice and listen to her nonsense. Princess Tao's words immediately caused an awkward silence. Everyone silently stared at the koi fish in the pond, occasionally sprinkling some fish food and fell into a state of silent observation. At this moment, a koi fish happened to jump out of the water. The girls laughed and pointed at the koi fish that jumped out of the water, laughing and shouting, "Look, look! Don't tell me this koi fish has become a spirit? It's so lively and active." Everyone slightly pushed each other. A few ladies originally wanted to squeeze to the railing to take a closer look, but in the end, they accidentally squeezed Su Shitao. Su Shitao's bent calf hit the railing with a dong. It was so painful that her face scrunched up and she screamed, Who hit this princess?" She was really unlucky. Previously, when he was kicked off the carriage by the crown princess's 2 bodyguards, his knees were heavily smashed into a puddle and were already bruised. Now that he was being squeezed and bumped by someone, he was afraid that he would bleed. She turned her head angrily and saw a familiar-looking woman. She took a few steps back. "You bitch again. Are you trying to make things difficult for me today?" Princess Tao flew into a rage and glared at the woman who took a few steps back. "No, it's not me, it's not." This was the concubine's daughter from Assistant Minister Zhang's family, who collided with Princess Tao's carriage and caused it to flip over. Previously in the carriage incident, Miss Zhang had already experienced Princess Tao's fierceness and terrifying fierceness. Unexpectedly, the two of them bumped into each other again. Chapter 51-52. But it wasn't her. It was the 2 ladies beside her, who quickly stepped back after bumping into Princess Tao. Therefore, Miss Zhang, who was standing behind, happened to face Princess Tao's angry accusation. "You bitch, kneel down!" Su Shitao shouted angrily, pointing at Miss Zhang in front of her. Miss Zhang couldn't help but tremble. She hurriedly looked at the ladies around her for help. But now, no one dared to block Princess Tao's anger for her. They hurriedly stepped back. Miss Li originally wanted to go forward and say a few words, but she was hurriedly stopped by Miss Jiang, who was beside her. "The legitimate miss of the Zhang family won't sit by and do nothing," Miss Jiang whispered in her best friend's ear. "Let's wait for a while." As expected, the moment Princess Tao finished shouting, a faint voice came from behind the crowd. "Who is Miss Su asking to kneel down?" Everyone's heart skipped a beat. A delicate and pretty woman in her early 20s slowly walked up and pushed her younger sister back. She glanced indifferently at the furious Su Shitao and said, "Don't think that you are a real princess just because others call you Princess Tao." All the ladies present couldn't help but gasp. They all looked at Miss Zhang, who was so blunt. The legitimate miss of Assistant Minister Zhang's family was really fearless. She didn't care about causing trouble for her family when she talked back to Princess Tao. As expected, Su Shitao was so angry that her hair stood on end. She pointed at Zhang Yuyan, trembled and screamed, You say that again." Zhang Yuyan said with a sneer, "As everyone knows, there are only 3 princesses in the divine land. Princess Wushuang is famous in the world. I don't need to say more. Princess Fu is the granddaughter of Great Elder Princess. She's only 9 years old. The other one is a princess. 5 years ago, she married Songzhou for the sake of righteousness. She hasn't returned yet. What? There are so many people here. But no one knows that there is another princess in the divine land." Miss Li chuckled. Miss Jiang hurriedly pulled her silly best friend. Today they had completely offended Princess Tao. A young lady with no rank calls herself a princess. Ha! I usually just take it as a compliment from my sisters. Don't tell me that you've really taken it to heart. Do you really think that you're a princess, berating the daughters of officials and making them kneel to you? If my Shu sister were to kneel down today, which of the young ladies present would have any face left? The daughter of an official in our divine land has to kneel down and apologize to a commoner lady with no rank. Isn't this the biggest joke in the world? Well said. Fong Luiying clapped her hands vigorously and walked over with large strides. Just now, she had heard the noise by the pond from afar. When she rushed over, she found that it was Princess Tao of Prince Zheng's mansion, who was throwing a tantrum again. Princess Tao was really a troublemaker. She was nothing, but she thought too highly of herself. When the noble ladies saw the young crown princess and Fong Luiying walking over together, they were scared out of their wits. They hurriedly lined up to greet the crown princess, who was not to be trifled with. No one dared to neglect the young crown princess. Compared with the arrogant and domineering Princess Tao, she was the one who was not to be trifled with. Chapter 51-53. As the young crown prince consort walked over, all the noble ladies and young misses she saw lined up to greet her. Every one of them was well behaved, without the slightest overstep. Their expressions were also more respectful than usual. Almost all of them had their heads lowered, looking like quails. The young crown princess raised her small hand and waved, expressionlessly saying, "No need to be so polite." The ladies repeatedly thanked her, then stood up in a well-behaved manner, retreated to the two sides and stood still. Dozens of ladies stood at the edge of the pond. Absolutely silent Feng Mingyue was extremely angry, staring at this elder sister who appeared with great momentum, and said with ridicule, "Elder sister really has a great aura. Now the way you act is more and more like the first madam's arrogance." Feng Luing sneered. "Younger sister, are you blind? In front of the crown princess, you dare to be so rude. Didn't you see that the other young ladies of the other families have already come forward to greet? Younger sister really doesn't know the rules. Quickly come forward to greet? Younger sister, you have to give face to the Count family." Feng Mingyue secretly clenched her teeth, smiled apologetically, and bent her knees to greet. This little girl Feng Mingyue greets the crown princess. She slightly bent her knees and stood up straight, looking at Arbor with a smile. Feng Mingyue thought, the greeting is just for show. Thinking about it, I am the grandniece of old concubine Feng. The crown princess shouldn't not give me a little face. Kaixio. Unexpectedly, the young crown princess walked past Feng Mingyue with a cold face. Her small face didn't fake any expression, showing no intention of giving face to Feng Mingyue. Feng Mingyue's fake smile suddenly froze on her face, and she couldn't help but mutter in her heart. This crown princess was too snobbish, facing her elder sister and facing her. It was two completely different faces. Could it be that she was looking down on her, a concubine's daughter? The young crown prince consort had a stoic and expressionless little face from beginning to end. For some reason, it became two different faces in Feng Mingyue's eyes. On the other side, Kaixio nodded after receiving the order. She stepped forward and kicked the back of Feng Mingyue's knee. Feng Mingyue, who was not paying attention for a moment, screamed and fell forward, kneeling down heavily. "Crown princess, did the crown princess allow you to rise?" Kaixio coldly said with a cold voice. "Don't you know the rules? Kneel properly." Kaixio angrily shouted, scaring Feng Mingyue to the point that her heart slightly trembled. Arbor walked to the edge of the pond and asked someone to bring him a stool to sit on. Only then did he calmly look at Su Shitao, who was glaring at him. The little stoic raised her small hand and pointed at Su Shitao standing to the side. Just as Kai Chi was about to step forward, Su Shitao clenched his teeth and curtsied. "Greetings, Crown Princess." The little Crown Princess frowned. "Why are you still here? Why is there a shit stirrer like you everywhere I go?" Su Shitao was already in such a sorry state at the entrance just now, but he actually followed her into the Count of Huainan's estate instead of returning home. She was loathsome just looking at him. Even his expression was distorted as he glared at this darling with hatred. Just looking at him was an eyesore. "You aren't deliberately staying here to plot against this crown princess, right?" Su Shitao almost bit his own tongue. This damn woman was truly sharp, causing him to be at a loss for words. "This crown princess advises you to behave yourself." Arbor snorted. "If you want to play tricks with me, I'll accompany you to the end. I just don't know if you can afford to play." Chapter 51-54. Su Shitao's knees were a little sore from bending, but the little crown princess did not ask her to get up. As a result, the man could only stand there with his back half bent and his face half frozen. The anger in his heart was so strong that it was rushing to his head. However, Arbor was even angrier when he saw Su Shitao. The commotion just now was all because of this woman. Arbor now felt very annoyed whenever he saw Su Shitao, and just wanted her to shut up. Su Shitao squatted until her legs went numb. She didn't even hear Arbor telling her to get up. A rush of blood rushed to her brain. The grievance in his heart was unstoppable. Who dared to give her attitude when she was in King Zheng's residence? All the servants in the mansion called her Princess Tao and flattered her. How could he be despised to this extent after casually entering the Duke of Huainan's mansion? Not only was he treated differently from the others when he entered, but he was also beaten up by the Crown Princess subordinates at the entrance. Now that the damned Crown Princess had seen her, she was picking on her again. She had already bowed to her in such a humble manner. What else did she want? Did she want to ascend to the heavens? The furious Su Shitao's mind went blank for a moment. He was so angry that he immediately straightened his body and roared. Are you deliberately targeting me? Audacious. Kai Xiu was also infuriated by this woman. These days, there were not many people who dared to be so impudent in front of the little crown princess. Many of the noble ladies took a few steps back in unison, and all of them huddled together on both sides of the road. Their eyes were filled with an inexplicable trace of fear. Crown Princess, I still have some matters to attend to in the residence. I will take my leave first. Crown Prince Consort. This subject is also with past experience. No one dared to stay here and wait for the little Crown Princess to make a scene. Because at this moment, everyone was very clear that they didn't want to live too long just to watch the show. This fire could burn them at any moment. Not everyone's drama could be watched blindly. At the very least, they didn't dare to look at the Crown Princess in front of them. Perhaps he would have to suffer together with that brainless Miss Su. The young Crown Prince Consort gave an expressionless grunt of acknowledgement, but the noble ladies hurriedly retreated as though they had been pardoned. Just as they were about to leave one by one, they heard Fang Mingyue's exasperated roar from behind them. What are you doing? Are you that afraid of the Crown Princess? Could it be that the ladies present don't even dare to say a word of justice? The noble ladies looked at each other in dismay and cried out in unison. Oh please, Miss Fang is not afraid of death. If you want to help Princess Tao deal with the little Crown Princess, you can do it yourselves. Don't involve us, okay? It's obviously the Crown Princess who is bullying others. Even so, you don't dare to say a word of justice? At this moment, Fang Mingyue was so angry that she stood up straight. She stomped her feet and said angrily, I don't know how Mingyue offended the Crown Princess to make you dislike Mingyue so much that you want to punish us by making us kneel. Arbor lifted her small chin slightly. Kai Xiu and Kai Chi both understood, and hurriedly stepped forward. Without saying anything, one of them kicked Fang Mingyue's back, and the other kicked Su Shitao's back. Their movements were exactly the same. As for Fang Mingyue and Su Shitao, their movements of being kicked to the ground were exactly the same. Chapter 51-55. With two thuds, the two girls miserably fell to the ground. They were so angry that they couldn't help but want to curse. Crown Princess, so long-winded. The young Crown Princess shouted. Behind Saishio, two tall and burly old mamas immediately followed behind her. They raised their hands and slapped Fang Mingyue and Su Shitao on their faces. You dare to be so impudent in front of the Crown Princess. The Crown Princess ordered you to kneel, and you dare to make faces? Young Miss Su, second young Miss Fang. This old servant can only make an exception today to teach you the rules of seniority. Arbor expressionlessly watched the two old nannies give the two young misses a few slaps. Hearing the two's wretched screams, she couldn't help but frown. Stuff their mouths. Kai Chi waved her hand and shouted. Fang Mingyue was so angry that her insides burned, and she completely lost her sense of propriety. In this residence, she was pampered by her parents every day, and doted on in every way. Who in the residence dared to be so bold and rude to her? This Crown Princess was abominable, abominable to the extreme. Fang Mingyue screamed, and pushed away the two old nannies beside her. She jumped high, her hair disheveled as she screamed. I'll fight it out with you. Everyone was startled. Young Miss Jiang couldn't help but exclaim. Second young Miss Fang, you can't. However, Fang Mingyue had long been blinded by anger. She raised her fist and rushed towards the young Crown Princess. Two hidden guards instantly blocked the young Crown Princess. Two pairs of cold eyes stared coldly at the person rushing over, as if they were looking at a corpse. Arbor only waved his hand indifferently, and stood up from the chair, rolling up his small sleeves while he was at it. "Move aside. You men don't need to interfere in the matters between women." The two hidden guards. When Madame Lu of the Duke of Huainan's estate heard the servant, who hurriedly came to report that the second young miss had offended her superior and violently punched the pregnant crown princess, she almost fainted on the spot. Her entire body went limp on Wei Ziqin. Wei Ziqin was even more anxious. She stood up and shouted angrily, "Where is he?" The servant was startled and quickly shouted, It sits at the koi pond in the willow garden." The madam of the Duke of Huainan's mansion was so angry that she almost fainted. She hurriedly stood up with the help of someone. When she was about to step out of the front hall, she almost bumped into a woman who rushed into the door. That woman was decked out in gold and silver, and when she saw the sickly madam in front of her, she immediately cried out, "Madam, you have to uphold justice for second young miss. What do I have to do? What can I do for her? Your daughter is so audacious that she even dares to lay her hands on the crown princess, who is pregnant with a dragon fetus. I think she and you don't want to live anymore." Second Young couldn't help but wail loudly. She held Madam's hand and refused to let go. "Madam, we don't know what exactly happened in this matter. How can you be so sure that it was second miss who made a move on the crown princess first? We'll know whether it's true or not when we go take a look." First Madam brusquely flung her hand away and said with a stern expression, "Moreover, so what if the crown princess made a move first? Can your daughter retaliate when the crown princess made a move? Let me tell you, don't say that the crown princess is pregnant with a dragon fetus right now and can't take the slightest fright. Even if she didn't. She hit your daughter. You have to endure it for me. You even rebelled and wanted to retaliate. You've lost your mind. I've always said that you have to teach your daughter well." Chapter 51-57. Eldest Madam was so angry that she was about to ascend to the heavens and leave her body. She berated, "The Count estate actually produced such a disrespectful thing like you. Why aren't you arresting this rebellious dog?" Madame Lu shouted angrily. The servants didn't dare to tarry this time, and hastily swarmed forward to tug at the unreasonable second Miss Fong. Second Miss Fong had long lost her head from anger. She had been chipping away at that defensive wall for so long, but she hadn't even managed to open a freaking small hole. She was so angry that she jumped up and down and cursed non-stop. Now that she saw people coming to arrest her, she used a large shovel to hit them. Two servants were caught off guard and were hit in the head by her shovel, bleeding profusely on the spot. Madam was so angry that she clutched her chest and cursed repeatedly, "Rebellion, rebellion, rebellion, rebellion. Are you all dead? Go up, bring her over here." Several burly mamas, along with several guards, dashed over. 3 to 5 people pressed second Miss Fong to the ground and forcefully pinned her arms behind her back. They finally managed to subdue this shrew with great difficulty. The little crown princess sat inside her defensive wall from beginning to end and expressionlessly watched the commotion outside. Wei Ziqin hastily walked over, separated by the defensive wall. Her mouth involuntarily twitched as she called out, "Jojo." Arbor waved his hand and removed the defensive wall. He left his stool and strode to his mother's side to greet her. Wei Ziqin was too embarrassed to ask if her daughter was all right. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that she was completely fine. It was better not to ask the obvious, Mom. Arbor glanced at his mother and felt that his mother's expression was a bit conflicted and strange. Wei Ziqin coughed lightly and patted her daughter's small hand. It's fine. Mom just wanted to ask you, this what exactly happened? She was fine when she left just now. So how did second Miss Fong provoke her daughter so fearlessly in such a short time? The little stoic pursed her lips and said, "How would I know?" Wei Ziqin. He suddenly felt that he had nothing to say to his daughter. Fong Luiying, who was still standing by the side, hurriedly said, "Madam, there's no need to worry. Actually, it's nothing serious. It's just that second sister's reaction was too extreme." How exactly did second Miss offend the crown princess? First Madam reprimanded her harshly. The maids, whose faces were covered in dirt, lay on the ground, not daring to raise their heads. They could only mumble obsequiously. We heard from second miss. It seems like the crown princess, she. The maidservants were so scared that they didn't dare to finish their sentence. Standing by the pond, Su Shitao, who was covered in dust and dirt, couldn't help but scream. What else could it be? If she didn't abuse her power to bully others, how could second young miss possibly fight with her? Shut up. Who are you? First madam stared at Su Shitao and asked coldly. Irritated by Mrs. Lu's contemptuous gaze, Su Shitao's anger erupted on the spot. Who am I? Who am I? She was so angry that her nose and mouth were slightly crooked. I am a guest invited by your Count of Huainan's estate. I am Princess Tao of the Prince of Zheng's estate. Your estate must give me an explanation for this matter. Damn it, these people, all of them didn't take her, Su Shitao, seriously at all. They kept asking who she was. Who was she? Shouldn't everyone know who she was? Chapter 51-58. She, impudent. Who are you referring to? First madam shouted. Immediately, two nannies stepped forward and slapped Su Shitao's hand, which was pointing in the direction of Arbor. Su Shitao was so angry that his eyes turned red, but he hadn't shouted yet. He was frightened by the second young Miss Fang's piercing voice. Fang Mingyue was so angry that she couldn't stop kicking and twisting her body. She was tied up with a rope by 3 to 5 servants and the old nannies. They dragged her to First Madam and pressed her body down to kneel on the ground. Seeing that she was disobedient, the nannies were so angry that they pinched her arm a few times. Fang Mingyue shouted even louder. She exerted force on her wrists and flung one of the old nannies away. She kicked a servant in the chest. Everyone only heard a crisp crack sound. That person flew out and was heavily thrown into the corner of the wall. Her head tilted, and she was on the verge of death. It could be seen that Fang Mingyue's kick was a killing move. The second young miss climbed up from the ground in a sorry state. She screamed at the top of her lungs. You dare to treat me like this? You wicked servants. See if I don't cripple you, ah. The servants and old nannies were all silent out of fear. At this moment, they suddenly saw First Madam raise her hand and let a few nimble guards subdue the second young Mississippi. They couldn't help but sigh in relief. After all, the second young Miss's martial arts were not bad, and her cultivation was already a level 5 spiritual master. It was indeed difficult for these low-level servants to deal with her. However, the guards beside First Madam were different. Each of them was a level 6 or 7 spiritual master. It was a piece of cake for them to deal with the second young Mississippi. Let go of me, you wicked servants. How dare you? Let go. Second young Miss Fang screamed. Her kicks and bites couldn't stop the guards from dragging her. They threw her in front of First Madam. Fang Mingyue felt like a dead dog being thrown to the ground. A trace of humiliation and hatred burned from the bottom of her heart. Mrs. Lu, you dare to treat me like this? Aren't you afraid that when my father comes, he will give you 2 slaps? At this moment, First Madam had already been helped to sit down. When she heard Fang Mingyue's words, she immediately sneered. Fang Mingyue, you are indeed very bold. You dare to speak so presumptuously in front of your official mother. It seems that all these years, I have indeed neglected to discipline you concubine-born sons and daughters. That's why your concubine mother has taught you to be so undisciplined and out of control. Men, slap him. Fang Mingyue was forced to kneel on the ground by the 2 guards. She couldn't move at all. She could only watch the fierce-looking old maid beside Madam rolling up her sleeves and walking towards her. Fang Mingyue immediately screamed in panic. What are you doing? You dare to hit me? My father won't let you off. Father, mother, father. Slap. A heavy slap interrupted Fang Mingyue's mournful cries. With this slap, Fang Mingyue only felt her mouth fill with a salty and wet taste. The maidservant Xiao Mian had sharp eyes and called out, Young miss, your mouth is broken. You're bleeding. Fang Mingyue was so angry that she almost fainted. Since she was young, when had she ever suffered such grievances? That old maid was really ruthless. With 3 slaps, her ears buzzed and she saw stars. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth, and tears and snot flowed down her face. Chapter 51-59. Mingwei, my pitiful child, ah. Little Madame Bao cried out in a shrill voice and stumbled towards them. She threw herself at her daughter and hugged her head tightly. She shouted, "Who dares to come forward? Who dares to touch my daughter? If anyone dares to touch my daughter, I will fight them to the death." "Pull second madam away," first madam said coldly. Madam, do you want to beat my daughter to death?" Little Madame Bao glared at first madam with a pair of venomous eyes and shouted angrily, "You can't do this. My daughter is beautiful. If she has injured you, can your Lu family bear this responsibility?" Fong Luiying immediately stood in front of her mother and shouted angrily, "Second madam, you dare to speak to madam like this? If you want to beat my daughter to death, then beat me to death first. Even if I become a malicious spirit in my next life, I won't let you evil people off. What are you all doing?" A man's angry shout came from the entrance of Willow Courtyard. For a moment, the bustling noises all fell silent. "I've made a fool of myself in front of the heir and lords." Count Huainan Fong Xiangui cupped his hands at a young gentleman behind him. The heir of the Duke of Jianping, Mo Kuan, had been waving the folding fan in his hand with a flirtatious smile. However, when he saw the little crown princess's expressionless face, he instantly froze. He almost knelt down in front of Count Huainan. "You should have said earlier that you invited the crown princess. If you said you invited her, we wouldn't have come. Aren't you tricking your father? Of all the people you could trick, you tricked your grandfather." His father, the old Duke of Jianping, was very wise not to come. Why did he have to come to the Count of Huainan's estate? This time, he met the little fiend. The heir of the Duke of Jianping slapped himself in the face. Everyone looked at him in bewilderment, their eyes wide open and their mouths wide open. Heir? Count Huainan looked at this young gentleman in confusion. Mo Kuan came back to his senses and silently lit a candle for himself. He smiled stiffly. Just now there seemed to be a mosquito. Everyone hurriedly nodded in agreement, surrounding him like stars surrounding the moon. However, Mo Kuan took a few steps back and deliberately put on a nonchalant expression. He waved his hand and said, Since Count Huainan has family matters to attend to, then this heir will not disturb you any further. Goodbye." Your Highness. Your Highness." Seeing that the crown prince was about to flee, everyone was speechless. "Stop right there." A clear voice rang out. Everyone watched as Mo Shitzi, who had run to the entrance of the garden in 3 steps, fell to his knees with a plop. The speed at which Prince Jianping's face changed was truly breathtaking. When he turned around while kneeling, a smile blossomed on his face like a blooming flower. "Little brother greets sister-in-law." "Hello, sister-in-law. What bad things did you do?" The little stoic shouted coldly. The heir of the Duke of Jianping was about to cry. He looked at Arbor innocently and said, "No, I didn't do anything bad." No one knew that before he answered this question, his mind had gone through 1,000 twists and turns, recalling everything he had done in the past 5 days. He really didn't do anything bad. "Then why did you run away when you saw me?" Sir Jojo shouted. "You have a guilty conscience. Did you go out on the streets to rob an innocent girl again?" Chapter 51-60. I don't dare, this younger brother doesn't dare." Mo Kuan waved his hand miserably. This younger brother has been abstaining from meat and reciting Buddhist scriptures at home recently. "I'm abstinent of worldly desires and charitable deeds." Even royal father said that this younger brother has recently made great progress. The little stoic pulled a long face. "Is that so?" Yes. The king of Jianping's heir nodded repeatedly like a chick pecking at rice. He said pitifully, "Sister-in-law, ever since this younger brother was taught a lesson by you, then completely turned over a new leaf and became a new person. My royal brothers can all testify." Wei Ziqing couldn't help but twitch her mouth, and she looked at this child sympathetically. Look at how scared this child was. Their family's Jojo's deterrence was increasingly surpassing Ling Rant's. "If I find out that you're doing any illegal activities again, even your father can't protect you. Be careful of your dog head." Arbor clenched his fists tightly. and a handful of fine sand leaked out from between his fingers. Emo-kun nearly pissed himself in fright, and he scrambled forward while howling repeatedly. Sister-in-law, sister-in-law. I swear. I've already been taught a lesson by you, sister-in-law. I won't bully the villagers again, won't do any bad things again. Fuck, Lil's sister-in-law is getting scarier. Such a sturdy rock turned into fine sand in a matter of minutes in her small hands. Well, how scary. How can elder brother stand such a shrew? So scary, women are so scary. Well, the little crown princess clapped her hands and waved expressionlessly like she was swatting a fly. Let's go. Thank you, sister-in-law, thank you, sister-in-law. Prince Emo was scared witless. He covered his head and scurried out of Willow Courtyard like a rat. He reckoned that he would have to take a detour whenever he saw Count Huainon's estate for the next 3 years. It was too scary. It was simply traumatizing. Prince Emo scurried out of Count Huainon's estate with his head in his hands and almost bumped into someone. Hey, little Kun, what are you doing? Why are you walking so carelessly? You almost bumped into the crown prince. A helpless voice rang next to his ear. Emo-kun's tease. The crown prince, who was dressed in a brocade robe and had his hair tied up by a jade crown, was staring at him with a serious expression. The crown prince of the Duke of Eternal Peace and the crown prince of the Duke of Linchuan followed behind. The one who spoke was the crown prince of the Duke of Eternal Peace, Emo Lu, who was looking at him sympathetically. He winked at him, telling him to be tactful. Big brother. I didn't do anything. I really don't have one. Emo Lien looked at him expressionlessly. Why do you look so guilty? Did you offend your sister-in-law again? His wife still had to follow his mother-in-law to Count Huainon's mansion on rainy days. She hadn't come back for so long, so he had to pick her up. The crown prince was in a bad mood when he saw Emo-kun. This fellow was running away like a rat. He must have provoked Charles again. No, big brother. Emo-kun waved his hand pitifully. Big brother, I've turned over a new leaf. The corner of Emo Lu's mouth twitched. He lowered his head and coughed softly. Elder brother, I see that little Kun hasn't gone out to cause any trouble recently. He should have learned well. Emo-kun nodded repeatedly and cast a grateful glance at the crown prince of the Duke of Eternal Peace. Emo Lien looked at him coldly. Have you seen your sister-in-law? Yes, I saw her. She's inside. Emo-kun hurriedly said. There's a crazy woman. She's hitting my sister-in-law. Big brother. You should quickly go in and take a look. This person's brain went haywire, and he almost bit his tongue after saying that. What? Chapter 5161. Emo-kun couldn't care that much now. In any case, he was already unlucky enough. No matter what, he had to drag a few more unlucky people down with him. As long as he could successfully divert his brother's attention to others, he didn't care who he harmed. It was fine as long as he was fine. Greetings to the crown princess. Count Huainon stepped forward and bowed to Arbor with a complicated expression. Just based on the behavior of the Prince of Jianping's heir, he had a rough idea of this crown princess. She wasn't someone to be trifled with. Otherwise, why would the Prince of Jianping's heir be scared witless and run away? Moreover, which of the people around him wasn't a reputable official in court? But they all respectfully stepped forward to greet her with smiles like a spring breeze. Which one of them wasn't extremely courteous to the crown princess? From this, it could be seen that this expressionless little crown princess was quite powerful. Count Huainon's heart was in turmoil. He lowered his head to look at the weeping Madame Bao and his second daughter. He deliberated and said, Crown Princess, please forgive my daughter. My daughter is still young and doesn't know the rules. I don't know why she offended the Crown Princess. Husband. Madame Bao hugged her daughter and cried bitterly. Husband, you have to save us. Madame is forcing us to our deaths. Count Huainon coldly swept a glance at first Madame Lu. The latter didn't fear his cold gaze at all. She seemed to be used to Count Huainon's attitude and coldly replied, Husband, you don't know. When this madam came just now, I saw second Miss punching and kicking the crown princess through the defensive wall. This is the attitude of an official. Is this the upbringing of second madam in our Count Huainon's mansion? Count Huainon was rebuked by first madam, and was so angry that he couldn't speak for a while. In the end, he only said dryly, "Then you don't have to beat them to death." "Husband, I'm not criticizing you, but there should be a limit to how much you spoil your daughter. Outsiders don't know and think that this madam doesn't know how to teach a concubine's daughter. But you don't know that in our Duke of Huainon's mansion, the daughters of concubines are raised and educated under the feet of concubines. Even madam can't interfere or make the decision." "Madam," Madame Bao shouted angrily. "Did I say anything wrong?" First Madame Lu sneered. "Today, Feng Mingyue dared to be so impudent and boldly offend the crown princess. Isn't it all because Lord and second concubine spoiled her?" "Master, look at what Madame is saying." Little Madame Bao was furious. She clutched her chest and shouted, "How can this be caused by me and Master spoiling her? It's clearly, what is it?" First Madame couldn't help but sneer. Could it be that this stupid woman wanted to push all the blame to the little crown princess? She was too stupid, too hopeless. "All right, stop arguing." The Count of Huainon, Feng Xiangui, felt his face burning. With so many officials and colleagues present, his own family was in such a chaotic situation. How could he, the Count of Huainon, show his face? "Crown Princess." Count of Huainon cupped his hands at the little stoic crown princess. "Please forgive my daughter's momentary anger for the sake of Grand Consort Feng." The little crown princess said crisply, "Unforgivable." Wei Ziqing covered her mouth with her handkerchief and coughed lightly to cover the laughter that almost came out. Her miss was a bit adorable no matter how she looked at her. Then she looked at second miss, who was kneeling on the ground with disheveled hair and a sorry figure, and felt even more disgusted. Chapter 5162. Count Huainon's old face stiffened slightly before he hurriedly smiled apologetically. "Crown Princess, please forgive this old official's second daughter. She offended you just now and offended the Crown Princess. The two of them punched and kicked me in front of everyone." The young Crown Princess pointed at Feng Mingyue and Su Shitao. "They." Her small face was extremely solemn. "Beat me. Everyone." The Crown Princess could actually say these words so smoothly. "Beat you? Who beat you?" "No, beat you." She used a large shovel and kept hitting the defensive wall, but she didn't even touch a single strand of hair. "That counts as beating?" Count Huainon was drenched in cold sweat as he thought. Today's matter is going to be troublesome. If the young Crown Princess was unwilling to relent and let his second daughter off, then today's matter wouldn't be so easily resolved. Count Huainon wiped the cold sweat on his forehead as his mind spun. He couldn't help but forcefully explain, "Actually, this matter, you can't completely blame Mingyue." Arbor turned to glare at Count Huainon. "Who else can you blame if not her? If she didn't insist on inviting this crown princess to this willow courtyard to look at some koi fish, how could there be so many troublesome matters?" The young crown princess pointed at Feng Mingyue. "It's her. She was the one who insisted on inviting me over." If Count Huainon could beat someone right now, he really wanted to raise his hand and slap his youngest daughter. "Are you stupid? Are you bored out of your mind? Why did you have to provoke such a big figure for no reason? You invited her over, and now you're riding a tiger and can't get off. It's really easier to invite the devil than to send the devil away." "Crown Princess, can't she speak herself? Why does she keep asking you to interrupt her?" The young Crown Princess waved her hand impatiently, directly interrupting Count Huainon's words. Just now, she hit this princess 168 times. Now this consort wants to return the favor to her. Do you think this is fair? Everyone looked at the little crown princess in bewilderment. They saw that the crown princess's little stoic face was brimming with a sense of righteousness and seriousness. Her expression looked very serious. Everyone didn't think much of it, and nodded their heads in agreement. There was nothing wrong with that. He had hit the crown princess 168 times, so it was reasonable for the crown princess to demand that he return the favor. "Big bow!" The young crown prince consort shouted. A small golem covered in black light emerged from the star field with a whoosh. The moment he landed, his body expanded to the height of an adult. He cupped his fists at Feng Xinggui's family and said, "Uncle Feng, sorry for the offense. The Crown Princess has ordered that second Miss Feng be beaten 168 times. Execute it now. Anyone who obstructs the execution will be beaten as well." Then, under Feng Xinggui's stupefied expression, the golem moved and jumped forward. Without another word, he picked up second Miss Feng, who was lying in Madame Bao's arms, and punched her chest. Ah! Second Miss Feng was hit to the ground, and she curled up in pain. The golem de Bao didn't have any tender feelings for the fairer sex, and stood up by grabbing second Miss Feng's hair. Like a sack of rice, she grabbed second Miss Feng in her hands, and slammed her left and right. Madame Bao fainted from anger. The maidservants and nannies on the side anxiously called out, "Second madam, second madam, second madam." Feng Xiangui gaped at the scene in front of him in disbelief. Chapter 5163. This crown prince consort, in front of him, in front of all the court officials, just like this, treated her daughter like a piece of rag, letting the mechanical puppet swing her back and forth for fun. His old face was so angry that it was distorted, and he was panting heavily. If he could make a decision, he definitely would not let her treat his daughter like this. But now who could help him? "Stop!" Feng Xiangui finally could not hold back his anger. Stop! Tell me clearly, which crazy woman has the guts to hit your sister-in-law?" When Emo Lien stepped into Willow Courtyard with a cold face, she immediately saw the situation. The golem de Bao was currently showing off its might in the garden, holding a rag in its hand, and was currently flinging it left, right, up, down and down. There were only dong 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 sounds that sounded like heads hitting the brick floor. And for a moment people were dazzled. The Duke of Eternal Peace's heir Emo Lu could not help but raise his hand to support his forehead. He coughed lightly and said, "Elder brother, this place is so messy. Why don't we go to the front hall and wait for sister-in-law?" At this time, Emo Lien had already silently retracted her leg from Willow Courtyard's entrance. She expressionlessly made an N sound. "It's so messy, let's go." Emo Kuan, this brat, sure enough, nothing good can come out of a dog's mouth. How was this a crazy woman violently beating his wife? Wasn't this his wife teaching some unlucky fellow a lesson? His wife was teaching someone a lesson, so he could not spoil his dear little cutie's mood. He quickly retreated and went to the front hall to wait for her. Emo Kuan held onto a large tree with one hand, trembling as he hid behind the tree, only daring to reveal two black eyes. As he looked, he could not help but shudder. Lil's sister-in-law was definitely not to be provoked. Once provoked, she would immediately go berserk. Who the hell could endure this? "Ah, Your Highness? It's His Highness the Crown Prince." Feng Boi's eyes were really sharp. He caught a glimpse of Prince Mo's figure that was about to leave Willow Garden, and immediately called out loudly, as if he had seen a relative he hadn't seen in 800 years. He rushed forward with tears in his eyes, and knelt on the ground with a plop. He said in a tearful voice, "I beg Your Highness to uphold justice for this humble subject. My second daughter is about to be taught a lesson by the Crown Princess. Your Highness, please give the order for the Crown Princess to stop." The group of old courtiers looked at each other, and stared at Grand Duke Feng, as if they were looking at an idiot. Was there something wrong with this guy's head? It was well known that the Crown Prince doted on his wife. Who in the entire divine land did not know this? Don't you see that even the Crown Prince doesn't want to get involved in this mess? You actually ran to His Highness to look for trouble. You even dare to ask His Highness to issue an edict to order the Crown Princess to let your daughter go? Did you eat some lofty leopard's guts? You're so arrogant that there's no end to it. At this moment, the little Crown Princess also saw her husband, and her eyes suddenly brightened. When Emo Lien saw Xiao Xiao's expression, he joyfully strode forward and grasped her hand as he said, Xiao Xiao, did you know that the rain outside has stopped? Since it's not raining, let's go back." Feng Boi looked at His Highness the Crown Prince in astonishment. His Highness did not seem to care about what he said just now. Why did he say something completely unrelated the moment he opened his mouth? If that was the case, could it be that his tearful words just now were all for nothing? Chapter 5164. At this moment, DeBeo had completed his 168th beating. He also released second young Miss Fong, and threw her to the side. His gaze then turned to Su Shitao, who was hiding at the side. Su Shitao was about to faint from fright. Her entire body trembled as she cried out in alarm. Don't come over. Arbor, make this beast stay away from me. If you dare to treat me like this, my Prince Zheng's estate will not let you off. How do you want to not let her off? Prince Mo, who originally had a gentle smile on his face, immediately turned ruthless. His cold and sharp gaze shot towards Su Shitao. The latter jumped in fright, and almost fell to the ground. Su Shitao's lips trembled, and her entire body couldn't help but shiver. She shook her head and said, Your Highness Crown Prince, I didn't mean it that way. Arbor raised his small hand and ordered, DeBeo. Yes, little master. DeBeo jumped in front of Su Shitao. His metal square face revealed a comical smile at her. You just beat Master 168 times. According to the rules, all of this should be returned to you. Now, I'm going to beat you 68 times. Are you convinced? I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. Su Shitao shrieked. When did I beat her 168 times? The one who beat her through the defensive wall was Fong Mingyue from the beginning to the end. Not me, not me. Master said you beat her, so you beat her. The golem roared angrily. It stretched out its legs and jumped. Its jumping power was excellent, and it quickly pounced in front of Fong Mingyue. Without a word, it picked her up and beat her up just like how it had done before. Su Shitao covered her face and cried out bitterly. She kept shouting, Big brother, save me, big brother. The little crown princess clenched her fists. She wanted little steel teeth and said nonchalantly, Beat them up until they have to make a detour when they see me in the future. Annoying. Who had the time to chat with these orioles and swallows every few days? If she couldn't raise them properly, she would beat them up until they were all obedient when they saw her in the future. When the Empress received the news, it was already dinner time. Hearing that the young crown princess retaliated against the miss of Prince Zheng's mansion and the second miss of Count Huainan's mansion, she held her chopsticks in a daze. Empress? Zhenju, who was always by her side, called out to her softly. The Empress came back to her senses and said with a sigh, She looks like me. She looks exactly like me when I was young. If she could make a move, she would make a move. Who would be willing to talk nonsense with you all day long? She was indeed Bai Wuxia's daughter-in-law. She was still as elegant as she was back then. The corners of the palace servants' mouths twitched. They coughed lightly and lowered their heads without saying a word. Men pass on my orders. The Count of Huainan did not teach his daughter well, so he was fined half a year of his salary and suspended from court for half a month. As for the second miss of the Fong family, she actually dared to beat up the crown princess and the young imperial grandson in public. Just punish her. Punish her to go to Xian nunnery to cultivate for half a month, so that she can get rid of the evil aura all over her body. Crown Princess, the Fong family sent an apology gift. There are a total of 3 carriages parked outside the palace. The little Crown Princess was fiddling with a poisonous plant that she had recently cultivated. When she heard this, she didn't even raise her head. Accept it. What apology gift? It was clearly a gift from Fong Luing to thank her. First, Madame Lu's illness should be getting better. Little Madame Bao followed her weeping daughter to the nunnery to take care of her. When she returned half a month later, eldest Madame's illness should have almost recovered. Chapter 5165. Dad Big Brother Boohoo. Su Shitao, who was in pain all over his body, lay on the bed and cried while pounding the bed. I don't care. I've been beaten to such a miserable state. I'm in pain all over. Big brother, you must seek justice for me. Suhi also gnashed his teeth and said, Kong, you must give your sister an explanation for this matter. Explanation. Eunuch, you asked His Highness to give Su Shitao an explanation. What does His Highness want to explain? How can he explain it? Can His Highness climb over the wall to the East Palace with a sword and beat the Crown Princess in front of the Crown Prince? Or can he rush to His Majesty and the Empress with a whip and ask for an explanation? Consort Shi Yongyan sneered. Su Shitao, if you ask your big brother to seek justice, who can do it for your big brother? Sister-in-law, His Majesty said that Count Huainan didn't manage his family well, and his family was in chaos. He couldn't even manage his family well, let alone deal with the court affairs. Now His Majesty personally issued an edict to punish Count Huainan's salary. Not only that, but he also ordered Count Huainan not to attend the court for half a month. Do you know how Count Huainan's unruly girl is now? She was sent to Xian nunnery by the imperial family to cultivate. His Majesty said that if she can't learn the rules and wash away the hostility on her, she shouldn't return to the capital. Do you understand? Don't return to the capital. Do you think His Majesty doesn't want to punish you? But you're smart enough not to fight with the Crown Princess directly. So His Majesty can't find a reason to punish you. But your brother, your big brother, he was implicated because of you. His Majesty even dismissed him from the inspection mission in Guangnan City and sent other imperial envoys to him. Enough! Mo Shikong shouted angrily and stopped Consort Shi Yongyan's endless words. Shi Yongyan couldn't help sneering. She glanced at Su Shitao, who was lying on the bed and howling, and her eyes were full of disdain and disgust. Do you think the second daughter of Count Huainan will have a good life in the future? The person she offended was the Crown Princess. Right now, the entire capital knows about her feisty temper. Do you think she can find a good family in the future? Who would marry such a girl? A woman who had been ordered by the emperor to go to Xiayun nunnery to cultivate, devote herself to doing good deeds, and wash away her hostility. Who else would dare to want her? She's completely finished. Have you said enough? Mo Shikong roared. Sister-in-law, I know. Do you dislike our family? Do you think that our family has come back and divided your properties in the prince's mansion? You've always despised our family. You think that we're outsiders and shouldn't fight with you for the gold, silver, pearls, and jade of this prince's mansion, and shouldn't come back to annoy you, right? But I am Big Brother's younger sister after all. Before you say these heart-piercing words, have you ever thought that I am your sister-in-law, Big Brother's younger sister? I'm just speaking the truth. If I said something unpleasant, please forgive me, younger sister. Princess Consort Zheng could not help but sneer. I know. Sister-in-law, you've never treated us as your family. Younger sister, what are you talking about? You're His Highness's younger sister. How could His Highness not care about you? I'm sure Princess Consort doesn't have this idea. A soft voice emerged in the midst of all the crying and shouting. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.